I dare you to find a channel who has better bops. You can't do it. It can't be done. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. By the way, currently, if any of our mods are in the chat that know they could jump in, I think whoever had earlier volunteered to be the call screener lost track of time because I currently don't show a call screener connected. If somebody can jump in until the screener connects, that would be great. I think it'd probably be about 10 minutes till Quail Coffee can back it up. But the other person. Anyway, that's not as important. Let's talk about what this is. Let's talk about why you're here. This is a show called Cus I Wanna, and I'm Jimmy Snow. What is Cus I Wanna? I feel like the intro explained it the best, but nobody knows for sure. Look, here's the deal. Normal, well-adjusted people, when they have a day off, they go, man, it's my day off. I'd like to do this hobby. I'd like to see these people. I'd like to go out. I'd like to whatever. And I often will have a day off and go, I'd really like to work right now. I'd really like to. Now, is some of this like an ego thing? I'm a YouTube creator. Of course it is. I think my voice is valuable and should be streamed out to hundreds to thousands of people at a time. Obviously, like we can be real about what it is. We can talk about what it is. But on some days, we don't have shows, and I go, it's kind of a bummer we don't have a show. I feel like I'd enjoy having a show. Sometimes I also think that I might enjoy just doing a stream solo, because I basically never do that right now. Usually it's HOSTility, which I am always featuring somebody else and saying, this is the person that I want you to hear, and then I try and reduce the amount that I cut in, though, of course, when callers come in, especially with topics that are my specialty, I often sort of can't help myself. But then also there is beyond that, like the Sunday show, which I do with Matt every week. And I don't know, every now and then I want to do it alone. But also, to tell you the truth, Cus I Wanna won't always be alone. So Cus I Wanna is a show that I will do Cus I Wanna. It'll happen when I wanna. I might even do Cus I Wanna on my channel, on my main, I shouldn't call it my main because I do most of my work over here these days, but on my channel, which bears my name, Jimmy Snow, I might even occasionally do an episode over there. Like, let's say we do a show, like one night we have the hang up, and I'm like, oh man, you know what I want to do is I want to go live and keep talking about some topic, or I'm feeling all amped up. But I don't want to do it in a way that interferes with the algorithm of the other people's shows who are going. That's going to reduce the number of notifications out. So, Cus I Wanna, when I wanna, maybe where I wanna, though default here if it's not going to interfere with another show that's going on that day. That's sort of the deal. What are we going to talk about? It's a call-in show. Every show on the line is a call-in show. And you can call 720-619-2288. And you can use the web link, which is also in the description. That will get you to me, and we can talk about, I'm ready to debate anybody on any topic. Obviously, I most often am here to talk about whether or not God exists. So I'm doing a little production things at the same time. But I'm often here most excited to talk to theists. However, I drop a lot of information about my beliefs through different shows. I know that one of the topics that came up recently was my view that 98% of photographers will be out of a job within 10 years because of the direction that AI is going. And that was rather controversial. And that's one of the ones that I've had more comments on about Jimmy's so full of shit here. Jimmy's so full of shit. And I'm happy to have those conversations. We will talk, debate, argue, comment about virtually any topic that you wanna. So it's a show that I'm going to do Cus I Wanna. And it's a show that I'm going to do when I wanna. To some degree, though most often on the line, where I wanna, and we'll talk about what you wanna. There may be the occasion where you bring up some topic like, hey, Jimmy, what do you think about whatever? And I go, I don't wanna. That might happen from time to time. We might say I don't wanna. But sometimes I wanna. And then a lot of times, these shows will begin with me and a guest talking, or me ranting about things which annoy me, me sort of talking about it. It's one of those situations where it could be anything. It could be anything because I wanna, or because you wanna. It's when we wanna, where we wanna, cause we wanna, on the line. But it is always the one thing that will not change, no matter who wannas, is that this will be a call-in show. So the number down below, 720-619-2288. 720-619-2288. Is somebody saying I'm offline? No, I'm not offline. What are you talking about? I was paying attention. I for a second I thought we were having a little bit of an interference here. Anyway, 720-619-2288. Whatever topic you want to talk about, whatever you want to talk about. It can be theism, atheism. It can be political shit. It can be the news of the day. I got to tell you, if you call about a lot of sort of social topics, it's going to be hit or miss. If you call in about pop culture, it's going to be hit or miss. It has to be a conversation with a direction. You're calling to ask me a question. We're going to still maintain sort of those rules. Like, it's not a show where I'm like, hey, do you know what I did? I gathered hundreds of my friends here, my audience. I gathered them here together so that you can have my show, so that you can tell some long story, it still has to be a direction. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, this is an exercise in ego, and that sounds negative to everybody. I feel like by default, if you say somebody's like, this is for my ego, it sounds negative because it is. It's disgusting. But this is actually one of the things that I almost rant about almost every time that I do a show. I literally work in a world where everything's an exercise in ego. Because at the end of the day, ego technically is a neutral thing. It's just that we talk about people being egotistical a lot, and we refer to that as negative. But listen, some of it's negative and some of it's positive. At the end of the day, every single person that you ever consume the content of that is producing their own content or consenting to their own content, because there is obviously the occasion where someone doesn't know a camera is present and we consume that content and it's like somebody slipping and falling or whatever. You know, there's content which hasn't been consented to, but consented to content involves people deciding, you know what would be good? Me talking to as many people as possible. Not just me talking to as many people as possible, me influencing as many people as possible. I nicked myself shaving. Anyway, I keep catching a little glimpse of it. Me talking to and trying to influence as many people as possible to think more like me. Not manipulate. I don't want to manipulate anyone. I want everyone to, I like being a part of a person's journey. If ever I felt like I actually changed somebody's mind, that I changed someone else's, that would be deeply uncomfortable. And as I've said many times, we don't change minds here on the line. We don't change your mind. You change your mind, and we may be a part of a journey. Right now, just in case people are wondering why I haven't gotten to calls yet, waiting for them to be screened because we'll still use the normal system. So there's still going to be a screener. It's still going to make it easier to pick topics. If the lines get full up and we're getting lots of interesting topics that we'll take quickly, I'll open more lines and extra lines. But we can make it about we can if we're doing lots of short calls, we'll do more lines open. Right, usually open 4 lines at a time. And then once we have our new system totally set up and going, which hopefully is going to start soon, I'm just waiting for the company to drop it. The company we're working with dropped the new version. But anyway, we'll be opening more lines in the future as well. So we have a bigger list of options. It will also mean that more people, most shows, everybody who calls in and gets connected, I should be clear, and gets connected, not just everyone who calls in, but also gets connected in the queue. We take almost every call. In the future, that will happen less. More people call these days. And so we will be filtering. And by the way, we will end the show the same way we always end shows, except for the Sunday show. It will end with, I see some people have put in super chats. We will do a super chat portion at the end of the show, hopefully to just cover the production costs of the show. By the way, I should mention, it won't just be me hosting Cus I Wanna. Most often, especially at first, it will. But we're adding new production people, and there will be the ability, the option in the future. I imagine Matt will be the next host of a Cus I Wanna, just because of the availability of his availability to the person that we're bringing on the production team, which it's not really a secret. Arden is training to produce also. And so I imagine he'd be the second host, but in the future, as people coordinate and collaborate and everybody make sure that there's nothing going out and I can, cancel if a clip is scheduled to go out, I imagine you'll see other people. Anyway, we'll jump into calls here in a second. But the point I was making about ego, because I think about it a lot, is it is a neutral term. To say something that is for the ego, and even in psychology, they talk about the ego versus the id and all of this stuff, that somebody will even have a problem with the way I just said that, because I probably even just said that wrong, as I tend to do. But there is something about being in a career field. Like, just think about, if you will, what it must have been like in the last 6 months for me to go, you know what people want more of? Me on the line. When in the months prior to that, the thing I was saying is, you know what people don't want more of? Me on the line, and more shows and more. Let's just keep it to these key people. And funnily enough, it has worked. The most popular show right now is the Sunday show with Matt and I. And there will be a lot of people who say that's because Matt's on it. And that's true. Matt being on it is part of why it is the most popular. I will point out, Matt has his own show on Wednesdays, and that the show he and I do together on Sundays outperforms the show he does on Wednesdays, which he often brings in other people for. And there will be guests where that isn't true. There'll be times he brings in somebody like a Seth Andrews, and then it's like, yeah, well, Jimmy, you never hit Seth Andrews' numbers. Of course I don't. They're both better than me. Why would I? But at the end of the day, it's just wild to be in this world where you're like trying to pretend you don't think your voice is valuable and that you want it to hit as many people as possible, even as you know you're not perfect. Even as you know, like, that's another fucked up thing. Especially, like, I promise, I know calls are lining up. We're waiting. I'm sorry, people who are waiting. I'll get to you in just a moment. But I do kind of want to bring this up. There is this, like, fucked up thing where if you have enough confidence and not enough humility, like, to go, I want to influence other people, to be an influencer, which is the word I fucking hate the most, even though that's because of who we associate with influencer as an actual term. It's probably descriptive, but I fucking hate that word. It makes me feel gross, about what I'm doing, and makes me think about my internal motivations. It's all fucking disgusting. Like, I truly, it's my single source of greatest source of self-loathing, which is it saying something, because I have plenty of self-loathing, but imagine the amount of ego to go, look, I know that I'm not even perfect or even close to perfect on a lot of issues. I know that right now, I know where I stand politically, but I cannot articulate my connection to leftism nearly at the level I can connect mine to atheism, humanism, being an ex-Mormon activist, all of these things that it's sort of like, it's actually that if you compile all of the solutions to these problems that have nothing to do with my politics, I then sit and go, oh, well, this independent of that, I'm a socialist. You can describe me as a socialist because of all these other conclusions I came to, as opposed to some sort of like, I'm a socialist. So let me go read and decide and find out what that means for me, which I feel like is what I grew up in. I feel like I grew up with, you're a conservative, so now here's what that means. Let me tell you what you believe. But I'm not perfect on a lot of issues. And there's a lot of things I'm still learning, and there's a lot of things I'm still coming around to. And this is something that I feel applies to every creator. So when I say this, I know that there are going to be comments that are like, Jimmy just admitted he's a fraud and shouldn't be up here. And in a way, that's true. Because I am, as is everybody else. In fact, I don't even trust anybody who doesn't have imposter syndrome. Do you understand me? I don't fucking, actually, I shouldn't say that, because there is one exception where I go like, this guy thinks he should be here. And I actually do tremendously admire him as a person and as a good friend and everything. But most of the time, so I will say, not without exception, there are exceptions, but one of the things that will the quickest turn me off to a person, and in fact probably is the case of who I am going to sort of refer to, and people will have their theories about, and many will get it wrong and immediately be like, oh, I know who. Many of the oh, I know who's are probably going to get it wrong the most. But there are many people who I have met, and their lack of imposter syndrome was why I pursued no follow-up friendship relationship with them, where it's like, nope, You feel like you belong here. The number one reason I don't like Joe Biden, and there's plenty of reasons, I'm a leftist, not a Democrat, is Joe Biden thinks he deserves that job and has for a long time, and has since the days where, like right now he's been in, and you're like, yo, he's actually not as terrible as we were expecting based on his history. He is today living a version of himself that's a lot better than we expected. And almost as good as you can expect a centrist candidate trying to appeal to a progressive wing, about as good as you can expect, maybe a little worse. But again, I'm a leftist, so I'm not saying he's a good leftist candidate. I'm saying this was less awful than I was expecting. The number one reason I have never liked Joe Biden for president is that he wanted to be president. Not just wanted to be, ran so many times and with such vigor and such certainty that he would win, that it was his office, that he was walking into the thing he earned. Nobody earns the office of the presidency, but we put people in there anyway. And yet, that's the thing I've disliked him the most for. A lack of imposter syndrome just turns me the fuck off. And so this is the point I'm making, is we are all fucking frauds, but it doesn't mean we don't have some positive things to contribute. The nightmare is, what if we contribute our negative things? What if we change somebody's mind towards something that we're wrong about? And then after the fact, not only do we continue to work on the things we're right about, but now we feel like we have to go back and say, yo, listen, before I started my YouTube channel, I had a podcast. I'm not going to tell you what it was called because I'm hoping there's no way to find it. But it was a cringy ass podcast. And it was a while before, so it wasn't immediately before. And there was some time between the podcast and the YouTube channel. And so we're talking over 5 years ago, because my channel, Jimmy Snow, turns 5 years old on Valentine's Day. I think this channel turns 2 or 3 years old also on Valentine's Day. Would it be 2? Would it be 2 years old? Maybe 3. Did we start this in 2020 or 2021? I don't remember. It's sort of turning 2 or 3 years old, I think, on the same day. I think I tried to make it on or around the same day so I wouldn't have to keep track of multiple anniversary dates. I had a podcast before this where, you know, my atheism points weren't bad. None of them were mine. I was only a repetition factory. And there are going to be some people now who are like, what do you think you are now, dude? I've heard your arguments a million times. And I would say, no, yes, you have, but you've not heard them the way I word them. Some of them, sure. Some of them I just straight copy and paste. Some of them are like, well, that, you know, I just did a show with Shannon or Matt or Forrest or whoever. And I go, you worded that better than I can word it. So I'm just going to adopt your wording. I just straight up stole Shannon's strong atheism position. The way she words strong atheism is better than me. And so I just stole it. It's mine now. I just took it. As I should, because we need to represent the issue as good as possible as opposed to the person. Anyway, the nightmare is, and as should be everybody's nightmare and should give everyone angst. And if it doesn't give them angst, again, I don't trust them because that means a lack of imposter syndrome. The real worry is being wrong, influencing people, confirming their wrong positions, and not being able to get them back once you're right again. This is why I've said many times, I'm entirely motivated by 3 people. And they're the 3 people who I know are still Mormons because of me. And no matter how many people I've now gotten emails from that go, dude, you got me out of Mormonism. And by the way, we've hit the thousands on that who have told me themselves. And that's not a brag. That's to give you an idea of the weight. Those thousands of emails saying like, you helped me on my journey out. You put that on one side and you put these 3 people are still in, and the 3 people are still heavier to me. On my scale, they balance over. So I had this podcast before I started Jimmy Snow with a gap between. Again, I'm not going to tell you what the name is because I'm hoping it's just gone forever. But it's as cringy as I'm about to describe. It was an anti-SJW atheist bro podcast on which I was able to get some trans friends to make fun of trans issues. Where I was like, yeah, by the way, I see your transness is valid, but let's talk about the transgenders. Talked about queer issues, made fun of pronouns, made fun of everybody being offended by everything. Like just the cliche atheist bro dude I'm, probably still pretty libertarian at that point, though with some like leftist leanings because I'm still voting on the left, but I'm like, well, but it was gross. And then quite a bit of change happened. And to tell you the truth, and one of the things that I don't think is detectable, but it's conspicuously missing. If you watch a lot of my first 6 to 12 months of content, you're going to see a conspicuous lack of attention to certain issues until I started being exposed to people until I actually bothered to start learning about trans issues from trans people who actually articulate trans issues in a way that I'm receptive to, and not just the people that like the right wingers push in front of you because it's like, well, I mean, obviously this person's so bad at it, and this must represent sort of like the Fox News tactic of representing the left, or even the American left, where they go and get the worst representatives possible for the American left to represent the left. It's sort of that sort of thing. And I feel like I was existing in that world where I was anything that made me uncomfortable, that I didn't really understand, or that I wanted my what's the word I want here? Unfringed is not the uninfringed. I didn't want anyone to get between me and a punchline. I wanted to make offensive jokes, and nothing stops me from getting from making offensive jokes. So sorry, I'm getting all these things updated. That was me before YouTube. And I just think about the difference is time. And there are going to be things that I believe today that I'm going to realize were wrong in a few years. I pray to no God that it's not veganism. There's going to be somebody like, oh, Jimmy attacked veganism twice in 1 week. But I mean, that is an example of something that's already sort of changed for me, from people around me and also interacting with animals. I haven't become a vegan, but I've changed my dietary habits according to how I feel about specifically the animals that I eat and their experiences and what the impact. Now, there's a lot of people attacking me for Tuesday's show where I mentioned and they ignore this whole thing about how plant life for food would skyrocket even as we got rid of animals to eat. And then they're like, well, no, because animals eat most of it, which is right. But it won't be right after that happens. It doesn't, I think they're like, no, but a cow, you have to generate, 1,000 pounds of feed for a cow and it's actually worse than that. Whatever the number is, but we're just going to go with numbers that are easily to understand. Like 1,000 pounds of feed for a cow. And once you get rid of the cow, now you don't have to make that 1,000 pounds of feed of plants. No, but to replace that cow, you have to make 5,000 pounds of feed for human to make your meat replacements and your protein replacements. It's a really fucking funny thing. Anyway, I'm not going to argue because this isn't fair. I'm not having anybody on. By the way, if somebody calls in and they want to debate veganism with me, I'm mostly going to say, I don't want to. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit, but to tell you the truth, again, I know that that's a journey I'm on, which is why I don't do any dedicated videos on it. Right now, I'm transitioning toward it. I'm already mostly the way there, a mammal-free diet. And maybe one day I'll decide chickens aren't as stupid as I think they are, and they don't deserve to be eaten as well. But right now, most of the meat, 98% of the meat I eat, chicken and turkey. And I've also reduced the overall meat intake. So there are going to be things like that. And this is that rant that I want to go on, which is just this sort of idea of, because we now also have a standard of perfection where change is terrifying if you're a public figure, because the moment you do change, you anger a bunch of your old base, and then you're embraced by a new base. And you might not like the new base. In fact, I've talked about this a lot, and part of why I don't feel as bad about how little I've been posting over on Jimmy Snow, though I do for the people who deserve it, is that a large portion of the old Jimmy Snow audience I don't feel community with. I definitely became a part of a culture on that show that I don't like. I don't like myself being a part of, and I don't like other people being a part of. It's not in every episode, but it's in a lot of episodes, and it's especially in those episodes where clearly the motivation of myself and anybody watching isn't, ooh, let's take down these bad beliefs. It's, ooh, I hate these women, or this guy, but it's usually the women. And I like to see them roasted. And I like justifying this thing that's actually a sexist urge because they're evil. I like justifying the shitty parts of me, the bigoted parts of me, because I'm technically on the right side of this issue. So I get to be bigoted. This is a problem I have with a kind of content that I made that I tried to make more about the issues than the people, but I know I slipped and I've taken down a lot of those episodes. I know there are times I slipped and I passed lines and I shouldn't have passed lines. And then I know that there are those episodes out there that I didn't really slip. I'm not saying I'm not going to make a joke about somebody, a little roast or two here and there, but didn't really slip. However, I know the motivations based on comments, feedback, and seeing how certain things went down from that moment. I know what the motivations of a lot of the audience that embraced it were. And unfortunately, it's often my most popular content. Because being a dick to other people for the sake of being a dick to them, not because they're lying to you, not because they're misrepresenting, because they're probably doing all of that. When it becomes about the person and how much you want to just own them and see them fail, you have the problem. And it's something I have to fight with all the time. I promise we're less than 2 minutes away from getting to calls. I'm like 30 minutes in, but it's just been ranty. But this is what I want. This is what I wanna. This is what I wanna. This is Cus I Wanna, and this is what I wanna. It's tough on this show too, and I'm trying to balance it better because I could just ban Emmanuel, right? But I didn't. Do you all know what I did? Does anyone know why we haven't seen Emmanuel call in for a couple weeks? Emmanuel is a cringy caller. A lot of people they're like, oh, here's the Emmanuel call. At least I'm going to get some chuckles. And then there are people who don't even take the call. It's just a waste of time. And they're both right in a way. You are going to get some chuckles because he's not very good at it. But part of that he's not very good at it is he very surface level argues. And so what I did was 2 Sundays ago, so this coming Sunday will be the first time he might call in, is I said, look, you're repeating keywords. This time you've done something basically too stupid to interact with. You defended the phrase God of the gaps, which is a word that was made up to degrade the position. It's a joke, God of the gaps. It's an insult. Religious people don't defend God of the gaps. They defend why it's not a God of the gaps. And he called in to defend God of the gaps. And I said, look, here's what's going to happen. In the next 2 weeks, if you could make another call to a call-in show, I will ban you from this show completely. And I know the other channels. And somebody always tells me when you called. In fact, on that day, you called in and people were like, oh, he called Talk Heathen earlier. And it was the same bad argument. And I basically said, in that 2 weeks, you need to actually research this topic. You need to come with a fully prepared, well thought out topic. Something that is not just repeating cliches, something that is not just reading off of scripts and Google headlines. You have to come in and actually engage in an honest way. And I'm giving you 2 weeks to do that. And if you call in before those 2 weeks are over to any call-in show, you're banned from this show. Because I don't want to just turn it into memes and I don't want to just turn it into jokes. And I want to actually have a good conversation with Emmanuel. And I don't remember why I'm talking about this now. Oh, because I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to go down that road of here's for the chuckles. There's an old channel I used to collaborate with and I never should have. And their idea on life, and by the way, there's another debate channel out there that I think this is their idea. And they probably will succeed, by the way. I'm not saying it won't be lucrative. I'm saying I disagree with the philosophy. They chased dumpster fires. It was, hey, do you want to do this topic? Well, in what way will that topic provide a dumpster fire? Well, we'd actually have a debate about it. Let's get a dumpster fire representative into here for it. Let's talk to somebody. Let's do the dumpster fire. And that is not, do I enjoy a dumpster fire when they happen organically? Sure, I do. Am I ever going to be okay with people trying to force those things? Those are the channels that people need to watch out for. And those are the channels that, forgive me, are ruining society. I said less than 2 minutes away, and I even think I said I promise. Jimmy Snow is a liar. Let's start the show talking to Mary in Florida, and that's the wrong tag for some reason. I've done a very poor job here. Mary in Florida. Mary, you want to talk about the Jehovah's Witnesses and something else? What were you calling in for? Let's just let you say it.
Yes, I missed the show with you and Owen, which I was late to it. I thought it was at 7 and I missed it. So anyway, with a couple of different questions on the differences, similarities between JWs and Mormons.
Sure.
It seems to me that the JW shunning is worse than the Mormon shunning. Okay.
Yeah. So JW shun, it depends. So I can introduce you. I don't mean literally. This is more of as an exercise. I could introduce you to a Mormon and an ex-Mormon and an ex-JW, and you would say, oh, the ex-Mormon here had a way worse experience. So if we're talking about down to the individual, it varies, as it does with everything. In fact, I can probably find you an ex-Catholic who had a worse experience than an ex-JW. But when we're talking about the default, the average, and what's usually happening, shunning in the JW religion, in Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't know if I've only said it abbreviated so far. So if anybody's wondering what JWs are, Jehovah's Witness, in the Jehovah's Witness religion, it is a policy to shun. You are assigned a certain label. Mormonism has the label. It's called anti-Mormon, but it is only a socially charged label. And even now they're trying to sort of take back. We ex-Mormons, ex-Mos, have been calling ourselves ex-Mos for a while. I have a joke alternative character called Ex-Mo Sizzliak. It's a Simpsons reference. Anyway, they've been trying to make that label also a wicked one because they want people to associate ex-Mormon with a type of person. But all of the shunning that happens, all of the separation that happens is cultural. So if you take a person like me, I left the church and I lost friends. They were like, well, you're wrong and you know the church is true and I'm done with you and we're not going to ever hang out again. And it was more people who then just never tried to be my friend again than people who actually even said or confronted me about anything. In fact, most of them were cowards. Most of them avoided me. Part of that probably because they knew that when I was in the church, I was vocally and presented. I was vocal and I want to say and intellectual, but only in presentation. I was the person you wanted to argue against a non-Mormon, basically. I knew the scriptures better than everybody. I participated the most in classes. I participated the most in seminary. Was expected, I'm sure, to be a very successful missionary. And so for the most part, it's one of those situations of, whoa, what the fuck? That dude's kid, I almost said my parents' real last name, but that dude's kid left the church. And that's very uncomfortable because when the person you think would never leave is the one who leaves before everyone else, you basically need to be avoidant. And so it was a culturally reinforced avoidance. I stayed in contact with my parents. Over the years, I would cut off siblings. And then I have a cordial, if something happens that somehow affects the other member of the family, I can message my parents and say, hey, this thing that affects you happened, and they can message me. But otherwise, that relationship pretty much ended actually last year. I thought ended prior to that. Then I tried to just one last time, see if there was something to salvage. There's nothing to salvage as long as they aren't willing to make admissions. All of that is cultural. The Jehovah's Witnesses policy demand shunning. So when Owen left, his mother was instructed to stop talking to Owen. His friends would have been instructed to stop talking to Owen. And I'm using Owen now as a device because I actually don't know everybody who was in Owen's life, but you could use it as anybody, any Jehovah's Witness. It's cut them off hard so they experience depression, basically. So they experience a sense of loss. So they feel like, oh no, I've made a mistake because look at how bad my life got. Now, look at how awful this became.
Well, like I know Owen's story, and I've watched a lot of XJW shows, and it's like the child turns 18, and it's like, you're out of here, take only your clothes, and that's it. Which I think is abhorrent. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And then they also, JW, they don't like higher education.
Correct.
God forbid you learn critical thinking. But are the Mormons against higher education like JWs are?
No. And what's funny about the Mormons is that what they did is they went and started their own university and started infecting others. So there are 3 BYUs, BYU Idaho, BYU Provo, and BYU Hawaii. Then there is also Mormon Business College, and then there is just like the Utah and Idaho colleges that across the state they have a lot of influence over. What's really funny is when a person goes to BYU, graduates. Ooh, something's happening.
I'm going.
No worries. When a person goes to BYU and then they get out into the real world and they find out, oh shit, I've been treating BYU like it's Harvard and nobody is impressed by my degree. Because there is this weird culture in Mormonism where like you think BYU is a super prestigious school. You think that like you're going to the place with the truth and you're getting the best degree. And look, they have perfectly competent programs. Even a lot of their science programs are competent. They have, you go to a biology class and you learn about evolution at BYU. But it's not worth the cost, first of all. BYU is way more expensive than the quality. If you're going to say like Harvard costs this much versus ASU costs this much, it doesn't.
Not a liberal college,
right? It doesn't meet the criteria of what it's worth. Now, I believe that education should be free, but whatever, it doesn't matter anyway. But yeah, it's a sucky school. Now, that said, not everybody is made to go to BYU. And you are encouraged to go to college because they're not really afraid, or until recently they weren't afraid of education interfering with your religious beliefs, because they used to be pretty good at heading it off. The world has changed a lot because now even BYU can't keep a lid on the queer kids, and that's undermining their ability to keep kids in the school, as kids who aren't queer and are Mormon but like their queer friends are seeing how the church is willing to treat their queer friends. And so it's a different, very different situation between BYU and Mormons and JWs in that scenario.
But they still didn't allow black and white students to date.
For a long time. They do now.
Oh, okay.
You couldn't legally do that now. That's literally like, it's not even a matter of whether they would or wouldn't. I think they wouldn't prohibit it now, even if they could. And they try to pretend to be very racially integrated and progressive now. They aren't, but they try to pretend and give that view. So there's no rule in place now. The school would become unaccredited were it to enforce that as part of the honor code.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. BYU is the most prestigious Mormon university, someone said in the chat. That's technically probably true, except for also like there's 3 BYUs. So which one's the prestigious one? Anyway, Mary, anything else before I let you go?
And the JWs just want like plumbers and like kind of skilled labor.
Correct. Yeah, they want the people who will do the shit for them for free because they're going to be building kingdom halls. And one of their sources of income is to basically build up these generic-looking buildings that are actually resellable. So they build up a bunch of kingdom halls, and they put all of their like congregations in different ones. This is how I understand it works. Somebody might correct me, but you go to a town, you build up 5 of them, and then you go, all right, this group of people go, this one. Then a few years go by, and they go, actually, let's just compress. And let's put all 5 of you into these 2 buildings and let's sell off these other 3. And these are places that a lot of the land has been donated often. The building materials have been donated and the labor to build these buildings has been donated. It's basically pure profit for them.
Oh, I thought they got their members to build, and
they do.
So they have free labor.
That's where I'm saying the volunteers come from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they really love, a person with a trade skill.
Right.
Yeah.
And also this, and I'll let you go, hon.
Sure.
Is there any reliable data on if enrollment into Jehovah's Witnesses is dropping?
Oh, I don't know.
Due to them not being able to go door to door, or they're just not going to release data?
I don't know. I haven't looked. Mormons used to love to release their data. They're very more restrictive with it now, especially now that people have been independently doing the best auditing they can from the outside, where they go like, sure, Mormons say they have 18 million members or whatever, but they can only claim 4 million people attend. It's something crazy, and it's even crazier when you think about how much money they got out of that few people. But because it's literally it. If Bryce Blakenagel was on here, he'd tell you it is the richest entity in the world, that it's richer than Catholicism. And the
JWs or the Mormons?
Mormons. Sorry,
okay, yeah.
I went to, but anyway, as far as the JW, it's not something I check on. It would have had to have incidentally been put in front of me. I would have had to have been on a show with Owen, and Owen would be like, in the most recent survey, there's only this many and it's decreasing. It's not a number I actively track, but I'm interested in. If somebody puts it in front of me, I'd have a look.
I like Lloyd Evans' description of JW. It's 8 men up in the Northeast that tell 8 million people what to do.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you like Lloyd Evans, you are going to want to catch HOSTility on February 21st when he will be joining me.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Hell yeah. Cool.
Oh, that's great. All right.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. I've been looking a lot of XJW stuff, and
sure.
Just the shunning as a mother of an adult son.
Yeah.
There's nothing he could do that would make me not ever speak to him again.
Yeah. Yeah. It ruins families. Mormonism does too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Thanks,
all right,
Mary.
Well, have a good evening.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye. Also, just to show how much this show is a Cus I Wanna, that's the theme. Cus I Wanna. I forgot to do all the important things, which is like, say, click like, consider subscribing. We'd really love to hit 100,000 as soon as possible subscribers. We know that a lot of people who watch don't hit the subscribe. We unlock tools from YouTube when we hit 100,000. But on top of that, it helps us. It helps us more on our end than it actually does anything to you. You might get more suggestions for a couple of weeks, but the algorithm actually doesn't much care what you say you're subscribed to, or even what you want notifications to often enough. But it means a lot to us. So hit that subscribe, and then consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/calltheline, links in the description. The promise right now is if we hit 250 patrons, we're about halfway, I think, or maybe a little bit under halfway, since we started this campaign a few days ago, Sunday, I think. If we hit 250 on Patreon, at least $5 a month. That's where the tiers start. I'm going to shave my head bald. I'm going to shade off the sides of my beard. I'm going to just go down to a goatee, and I'm going to cosplay as Matt Dillahunty for a week of shows. A week of Jimmy Snow Dillahunty, Jimmy Snilladunty. I don't know how to make it. Snillawunty. That's pretty funny. I like that. I like the sound of Snillawunty. $5 a month, patreon.com/calltheline if you want to. Let's talk to Mark. I quite like talking to Mark. Mark from New York calling in. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, man?
Living that dream, running that solo show, having a good night. Talking about what I wanna.
Night rants.
Talking to who I wanna. And Mark, right now, I want to talk to you.
Nice, man.
Yeah, for sure. How you doing?
Well, I wanted to pick up on a couple points we've talked about in the past that I've given a little bit more thought to. Okay. And then also just ask, just to get some more information from you, because to me, this is like an ongoing work in progress where, I like these conversations because they challenge me on my assumptions and the way I think. And I then, after we talk, a lot of times I'll go online and research things and take a deeper dive, on some of these issues. For sure. But one of the things was just quickly on the God of the Gaps issue. So
yes.
I heard you mention it.
Yes.
A few minutes ago, you were talking about it, and I think the reason this comes up, and we've talked about this before, and you've actually mentioned to me that you think that I use somewhat of the God of the Gaps reasoning. In
Mark,
some of the
I say this politely. I think it's your only move. I think it's pretty much everything you do is present God of the Gaps.
So let me explain why I think you think that, and I think
I'd rather you explain why you think I'm wrong than why I think that, because I know why I think it.
So here, and I'll use an example. So a lot of the arguments are abductive. They take sort of the abductive format.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually the same format that a lot of scientific theories take as well, because the abductive argument is based on making an observation and then drawing an inference to the best explanation for that observation.
Sure, but let's not pretend that I'm taking the theories that are down the line with very little evidence, but we have nothing better as equal to like the theory of evolution. Now that said, the hypothesis of God, you can't say has anything but gap logic, basically, except gap logic means something else to coders, I think. But you can't take anything other than that to go, well, there's no good answer for this, so let's throw God in there, as opposed to this piece of evidence in an exclusionary way distinctly points to a God. I've yet to hear anything that you can say exclusively leads to a God. And then Mark, even if you did, and this is why these arguments that we end up in, I find ultimately boring, because even if we got to where you said we're getting to, which I disagree, but even if we got there, holy shit, my friend, Christian God is so far away from that conclusion. The Christian God isn't just so far away from that conclusion, it's incompatible with a sort of establishment of deism, an establishment of something that is scientifically consistent, until you then start committing other fallacies, like sort of dishonestly representing based on what is convenient and what works for the story, not actually what the intentions of writers would have been, what's consistent with that history, what people who actually study, like, for example, the whole thing of like, well, in the beginning, that whole thing's a metaphor. No, it wasn't. That's literally how they believed the universe began. Not even just the universe. They didn't have a concept of the universe. They had a concept of the world. In the beginning, they think that light came before the sun, which is crazy. It was an actual explanation to those people, because at that time, their explanation of everything was, how does this magic work? Not even how does this magic work? It's in what order were the magic tricks done? When was the lightning bolt followed by the whatever? And so these aren't the same. And abductive reasoning is distinctly different in a lot of ways too. You can use more, but just to say that like, well, I'm using abductive reasoning, and when I use abductive reasoning, I feel very satisfied, doesn't make it satisfactory. Because if it did, Mark, it would have been accepted by science. There's not this idea that it's unpopular to be a theistic scientist when most scientists are still theistic. The establishment of a deistic God or acceptance of a deistic God as a scientific fact would be out there. But it's not, because it can't follow the same process. So let's do this, Mark. You decide. Do you still want to stick on that? Because at the end of the day, we're just going like, you're like, well, my opinion's strong that it's reasonable to abductively decide that there's a deist God. And I go, well, that's silly. And we can fight over whether it's silly or not. Maybe one of us will. Or do we want to do okay, let's pretend that you won. Because I'm willing to give you that. Let's pretend that you won, and we've now gotten to deism. All we've gotten to is that it logically makes sense. I, once again, want to say every time, in case somebody tries to clip it, that I don't believe this, but let's say it logically makes sense that a type of God something out there created and started the universe, was the cause before cause. And we ignore the fact that you've actually just created new layers of complexity, because if you're going to say, well, logically, everything that had a beginning and everything that exists had a beginning, so we had to have something that didn't, well, God immediately contradicts that. And you go, yeah, but that's the purpose of God. And it goes, okay, then why can't that be the purpose of whatever actually happened? Why has it got to be God? We skip all of that. We skip the fact that God is actually way more complicated than just trusting that we're probably going to get a naturalistic, materialistic answer one day if we ever get an answer. Skip all of that. These are, sorry, I'm going too long because I'm basically over making points.
Go ahead.
The two options. Do you want to keep arguing on whether or not it is silly to believe in not even the God you believe in? Because you can't say that you only believe in a deistic God. You believe in a God far more something. You believe in a Christian God. Do you want to take on the deistic path or your defined theistic path? Because I find one much more boring.
So, no, I mean, point taken. I mean, to me, the reason it matters is you have to start somewhere. And so, that's sort of the most basic question or level of an inquiry. And you kind of have to try to come to some starting point and then go from there. I'm
Sure.
not very well versed, in Christianity, for example. Like most of the conversion that I've sort of had over the past few years has gone from being agnostic to this general theism. And because I was raised Christian, I kind of just fall back on that.
I agree.
And also, and so that's how I kind of.
All right, but let's address the point you made. You have to start somewhere. I agree because it's impossible not to. However, I don't know whether I agree with, this is a position Matt presents. I'm not saying he's wrong. I don't know if I agree with the position that you have to presup something. It probably is true that at some point you have to presup something, but at a certain point you might have enough to turn your presupposition into just a supposition that actually has good justification. Now, my argument is, because when you say you have to start somewhere, basically it's presup. If you're going to presup something...
Can you explain that real quick, what you mean by that?
Yeah. At some point, there's something you have to accept before its justification to exist. And usually, my argument is, if that is true, we have to presup something. You have to take it down to the most basic level it can be, to where we don't have a choice to go more basic than this. Because every time you add a layer onto it, you increase your odds of looking stupid, basically, is the way I would put it, but of being wrong. Now, that doesn't mean whatever basic thing you pick has 0% chance. So, for example, with the brain in the vat thing, right? That's what precepts love to throw at us. How do you know you're not a brain in a vat? I don't. But I will say I presup that I'm not. Because what other choice do I have? Literally, is my choice to say, yeah, maybe I am? So I presuppose that I exist because I have experience. And I see things, I smell things, my brain appears to be on, and that's just where I start. I can still be wrong. I don't know whether it's possible that I could be a brain in a vat. A brain in a vat has never been demonstrated to be a possibility, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. So I can't say in very similar ways to, I can't say there definitely is no God. God is an utter impossibility, like the strong atheist position, which I do consider myself a strong atheist, except for that I accept that I can be wrong. That's the nice thing about strong atheism. It's, you can say, no, I actually do believe God is impossible until someone shows me it's possible. Same thing with brain in a vat. But whatever. I'm in a position where at the very most basic level, my starting point is I seem to experience the world. And in that world, there appears to be other people who also experience the world. That's as far as I can get as far as things that I need to presuppose. Because once you've presupposed that, you can then start actually testing the things in the world, which is where the scientific process comes from, where you go, the stove is hot, and there are ways to test it even without burning yourself. So that's where I start. Where do you think the starting point is?
Okay, that makes sense. And that's actually similar to, because one of the concepts I've come across is this idea of a properly basic belief. And I think it's similar because from what I understand, a properly basic belief is basically a belief that you have that is not based on other beliefs. It's just sort of like a foundational belief that you hold. And absent a defeater, you're considered to be justified in holding that belief. And So like the brain in the back thing sounds very similar to that, because like one of the things that will be put forward as an example is that in like a properly basic belief could be in the objectivity of the external world, and that you're justified in believing in that.
Except for that, even a person like me, who's I think an actual skeptic, will say when I say I objectively accept the outer world, it's again because this is about as hard as I can believe something. Even knowledge. I've said this before. When I ask other people, what do you mean you know something? They go, what do you think know is? I say I know, basically as a colloquial term to describe I believe something as confidently as I can. This is as much justified. Right. I feel as justified in a belief as I can. Because I even within all of these things, I know there is room for flaw. So it's more of accepting when you're talking about objective stuff, it's more of just accepting because I have no other choice until I'm presented with something else. So rather than talk about what a perfectly basic belief is, because honestly, I mentioned this in a show earlier this week. This starts to feel like those pedantic fart sniffing contests where you're like, well, here's a concept from philosophy and let me scoop this fart up. And then here's a different concept from philosophy. It's two dudes who are talking to each other on the internet. We both, I think, have the same basis, because I actually don't think you have a choice otherwise. In the same way that you don't have a choice but to act as though you have choices in the first place, whether you do or don't. Yeah. I don't think you have a choice to accept anything more as for sure true than, it's almost a type of solipsism, not hard solipsism, but the only thing you really can say you know and should start with is that you exist and have experiences. And then it would appear other people exist and they have experiences. And if it is true that you and I are two separate entities having experiences in the same space, there are qualities of that space which are true regardless of whether we are there or not. And for both of us and everyone else. And when we die, they outlive us. I don't know what else more you could ask for than that. And none of that suggests God.
None of that does suggest God, although it also doesn't suggest so many other things that we include as part of our knowledge, like all of science. Like none of that includes any of science either.
All of science is included in what I just described. Literally all of it, because all of it can be brought back to, all of it will be brought back to the stopping point of I exist or somebody exists and they made these observations and they put these things together. Literally all of it is. And I'm talking about in a very real way. Because we can do like a precept does and go, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? And every step of the way, the place where it breaks and the religious presuppositionalist goes, well, how do you know you exist? Because what other choice do I have? Well, now the debate is over because I know it was blah, blah, blah. And I say that and I'm just switching my precept for your precept, even though it's a far less basic precept and it is not at its bare bones. Where the how do you know that ends a lot sooner than your experience of reality when you're talking about defending a God proposition. Way sooner. It does not go all the way back to I have experiences. I seem to experience the universe that is, and I assume that these other people telling me they're experiencing it too exist also.
Well, I think part of this thing is that for many people, and I think myself included, and it may be self-deception. It could be totally just a psychological factor that's driving it. But just like you experience your sensory perceptions, you experience I think you experience morality, and I also think that the belief in God is another type of experience like that.
Hey, has your morality changed since how old are you now, Mark? Do you mind sharing?
No, never mind. I'm 46.
Cool. I would have guessed much younger. You have the voice of a younger man. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I'll give it to you.
It's a compliment.
Would you say that your morality has changed since you were 20?
Probably on the margins, but not much.
Let's say since you were 15. Let's give you back when your brain hadn't developed empathy yet.
I mean, my sense of right and wrong. I mean, I think it's generally been, there. I mean, you mature as you grow older, and certain things, like you're going to kind of take on a greater sense of maybe.
You could just say yes, Mark. Thing. Mark, yes works fine.
No, it's changed. I think on the margins, yeah.
And did your spirit change? Did your God change? Or did your brain develop? Did a natural process occur which changed the way you thought about things? You got older, you got wiser, you had more experiences, you learned, hey, these things that I used to think were super important, they're not. These things that I thought maybe weren't important at all. This is a huge one for me. You know what changed for me from the time I was 15 to I'm now 32? I realized other people's emotions actually do matter. If I make somebody sad, it matters, and I don't get to just hide behind, well, I can't control if you're sad or not. Just decide not to be. I started caring more about, and so what do you think the mechanism was that changed me, and do you think it's the same mechanism that changed you?
Well, I think it's basically like our brain development.
Right. So if morality can change on brain development, why can't it originate from brain development? Or are you saying it can't?
I mean, I think it could. The point I was making was more that, and I'm assuming most people have a similar reaction when, like, let's say you're reading an article and it's about something happening, where some child gets hurt or, something like that, like a crime that took place. You feel it deep down inside of you that. Yes, there are things that are more quickly
obvious, but not everything is quickly obvious, right?
Right.
And honestly, do you think a human brain is incapable of naturally developing the idea as a social species, evolving? Because I believe we talked about it before. You do accept evolution. You do accept am I right on that, Mark? You accept evolution?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah. I do. And that was going to be one quick nugget before you eventually drop me off. I want to remind me to tell you about the evolution thing. But yeah.
Okay. So I just want to ask you then, if you accept evolution, can you imagine a social species with our amount of intelligence surviving if we didn't develop a sense of right and wrong? I'm saying, give me a hypothesis. It's sort of like when I talk about people with climate change, where I go, the people who deny climate change can't even create a model based on just numbers that are hard facts, where climate change couldn't have, it's literally impossible that it isn't happening because they can't create a model where it wouldn't. Can you hypothesize a race of people, and by race, I just sort of mean Homo sapiens. I'm not talking the way we sort of colloquially use race, but a race of creature, a species is maybe what I should say, that has our level of intelligence that would have had any chance of surviving if one of the things they evolved wasn't a sense of, as a social species who's intelligent, I should avoid doing things to other people's well-being that stops or inhibits my well-being. I can't even imagine what that species would look like. And every time they try and make a species like that on Star Trek, I'm like, these people would have murdered each other way before getting this advanced. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that, but I think, but then that somewhat confuses, I think, what is meant by morality, because other animals also exhibit behavior that
and it's
you could characterize as being like moral behavior, but we don't generally ascribe morals to animals. So it just becomes like
So you're right. If they were complex enough to label it, you would. That's the difference. And we are complex enough that we were able to take our baseline 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens existed, probably longer than that, but existed. And we were able to develop and develop and develop. And then we were able to get to the point. What's funny is when you look through history, you see tons of societies making the same immoral choices because they don't have a way to learn from their previous civilizations. Then they start writing words down. And then the world gets smaller as they're able to travel further from each other. And in these pockets of places where their cultures are being shared, their development as a innovative species, both for like technologies to farm and look at the stars and all this shit, and their morality explode. And this isn't just true like when we want to look through biblical times, because we consider the like written record of the Bible to be one of the most significant tradition handing downs. It's actually true in a ton of places. The Mayans debatably got like more advanced than a lot of those societies that we think about in a lot of ways. And we see that it was because they created a highway system. Somebody literally just tried to use an article about this that I happen to have already been familiar with to prove the Book of Mormon is true, which is crazy. But
that's funny.
We can agree on that at least, Mark. But they had these highway systems to connect each other. They had ways of recording. And as soon as they could just learn from previous generations, their development explodes. And they become more what we would call moral by today's standards. And they start doing less human sacrifice. I think, the Mayans stopped doing it long before the Catholics did, for example. They start thinking about, you know what? I shouldn't cut off people's parts because I don't want my parts cut off. And they started learning it where your baseline, when you come out of the womb, they go, here's what we already learned. And you've evolved to trust me, an adult. You're a child, because if you trust me, I'm going to tell you not to jump in the river so you don't drown. I'm going to tell you not to touch the fire so you don't burn. I'm going to tell you to stay away from predators so you don't get eaten. But now I'm going to start introducing these other concepts to you. And on that same baseline, you're going to trust me. But now we can logically justify all of those. It's not just that the fire's hot. Here's why it's hot. And that explains, I don't know how anybody thinks that there is a morality argument that makes sense to point to God, because I just don't think you can propose an alternative for a species that's as smart as us that have lived this long. If we were like 10% on average less sympathetic to each other, I think it might be that small a number. Yeah. Would we even be alive, or would we have nuked ourselves out of existence? Now, if you want to make a fine-tuning argument with that, I'll let you try that one, but it's not going to work either.
No, I mean, it definitely has a survival. It certainly seems like it brings about an advantage, a survival advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
yes!
that's undeniable. I mean,
yes, Mark. Yes.
I don't know what that ultimately like. I don't know what conclusion though is
that it's ridiculous to blame that we experience morality because a God exists. Because whether a God exists or not, I used to tell this to kids in seminary. Who I was teaching, though part of it was why I wasn't believing. Whether God exists or not, the world is going to look the same as it does now. And that's sort of what I'm saying. The world clearly exists. Either God exists or doesn't. At least as clearly as we can be clear about something. So whether he exists or not, religious people like yourself, Mark, I think, are saying the world could only look like this if God exists. And I'm saying bullshit. Because the arguments you all come up with for why that's true, the moral argument of one is incredible. Like, I'm trying to be nice, but I see it as super stupid. What a stupid argument to go, we have morals after fucking thousands of years of sucking at it. And even after once we could write, we kept going like, yeah, but you know what else I can do by writing? I can have all of the political power, and I can deny other people literacy and control the illiterates with my special penis. Like, that's history. And then when it became more accessible, we became more moral. Slavery became obviously immoral after our history became accessible to, we'll say, most white people, because we still did keep it away from other people. But until we started making people think about the lessons of the past and learning from history and learning a little bit of what you could call even science and this idea of like, hey, how do you feel about slavery if you just think you could have been born in that person's shoes and suddenly slavery falls apart because we started maintaining this tradition and making it more acceptable? Like, it's not just that the moral argument doesn't work for me. It's that it's stupid.
Right. Well, see, I wouldn't go that far, because what I was going to say was the moral argument isn't that there is no sort of behavioral component to morality. Like, I don't think it sort of tries to negate that and put it like, grounded.
If it doesn't, what's left, Mark? If the world looks the same and we are moral, whether God put it there or not, and it makes sense whether God put it there or not, what's left of the moral argument for God?
So there could be some things that's left because
just give me one example, Mark.
It becomes difficult because ultimately what you end up with, if you take the objectivity of it away, it becomes difficult to ground it in a way that's non-utilitarian. You have to formulate some argument where you're basically trying to say it's going to benefit the most number of people if we act in a certain way, and then you could find counterexamples where, because basically with objective morals, what you're doing is you're treating the person as an end of itself.
Who says morals are objective? You can say if you establish something is moral, so let's say our standard is well-being. That's my standard. Is that your standard, human well-being?
No, but see, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the standard, if you assume, I'm just saying, if you grant for the sake of argument that they're objective,
mm-hmm.
the standard sort of becomes that the person is an end of, there's intrinsic value in a person.
Why?
Period, full stop. Right?
No, that's absurd, Mark. Yes, there's intrinsic value that is intrinsic to me. In the same way that a moral is objectively moral or not, if it objectively appeals to the standard set. So if you make the standard value to me, you can say intrinsic. To the universe, Mark?
It's not just to you. It's not just to you, because if you were mentally handicapped, and because what I'm saying is that if you lack cognition,
mm-hmm.
right, and if you weren't able to perceive the importance of your own self, I would argue you're still just as important. It's not dependent on you subjectively saying
no, you definitely aren't.
I have intrinsic worth.
You're describing a quality that can only be considered. Now, I'm not saying you can't then externally be important to others. But as far as your actual level of importance, you're describing a human experience. So you are either important to you or you are important to others. Now, we have started to extend that into other creatures, but it does not go beyond the living, conscious, evolved beings who have developed moral systems, and that has changed what things we consider important or not. Right now, Mark, I suspect, but I can't prove, but I suspect it is very likely that there is not an advances in intelligent like us, but there is an advanced planet somewhere with lots of life on it that hasn't developed electricity or technology or anything, and right now is being destroyed by an asteroid and was covered by thinking beings that probably communicated with each other, probably had one species that was smarter than the rest. And that's, I believe, but again, I'm not going to claim this as for sure, I couldn't be wrong about this, but there are things that are conspicuous about human life, like how quickly we developed when the conditions were right, as not humans, but life in general. And when we know what we know about the size of the universe, I would say it seems very likely. And all of those things that died right in this second as the meteor hit, or however long it takes for a meteor or a planet collision or whatever to kill them, all of those things that died may have been very important to each other, may have been important relative to the ecosystem. We could say bees are important and they have a value, but not intrinsically without any justification. They have a value to these flowers, and these flowers pollinate these things, and as a result of these existing, humans eat, so bees are important to human. And if right now a meteor comes through and destroys the whole Earth, the importance that is lost will be subjective to each individual, and if truly every life on Earth dies, none of those lives are any longer important, because there is no one left to perceive their importance, unless there's an alien civilization that's counting on us for something that we don't know about. Again, that part could be wrong. But the sense of importance is a sense. You require experience to have it.
But earlier we were talking about the how did you pronounce it?
Presuppositional arguments?
Yes. You were saying that it didn't matter if anyone was around independently to make the observation.
I'm trying to connect the point you're making to what I just said.
Because right now, I thought you just said that like if like we were to somehow get like wiped out, like no one.
Oh,
like,
no. Sorry. Yeah, you did misunderstand. I'm not trying to rewrite. So let me explain. If you and I are standing here and there is a computer next to me, does the computer exist if you and I aren't standing here? We both assume so, right? Yeah. Yes. That's all I was saying. So, right. These are facts. There are facts that are independent. So if the world explodes because a meteor hits it, and one of the things that survives is my severed head, do I still exist? Or is there a lifeless head of mine that if somebody knew me and was in a ship, you know, maybe Elon hid somebody in the trunk of that Mars car and he passes by and he opens up and he goes, hey, that's Jimmy. Then to that person, I'm Jimmy. But if no one exists, I'm space debris.
But see, like and maybe this is the argument from when you take things to the logical extreme, but
there's no such thing as a logical extreme, sir. Go ahead. That's a hilarious statement to make. This sounds like you.
I was prefacing my own logical fallacy. No, like. Where it ends up, it seems, is that you can't distinguish us then from just a collection of molecules.
Correct.
We're no different. Right?
To the universe, Mark, to the universe, that is correct. To anybody in the Andromeda galaxy who has never discovered us, that is correct. To anything that could have a subjective, that doesn't have a subjective experience, you are correct. Mark, you are a person I like. I know you and Matt get into it, but I quite like talking to you. You have a voice that weirdly like calms me. And I don't even know you, but I'd say I like you. And if you were local, I'm sure we'd hang out and talk about non-religious things all the time.
No, yeah, we'd shoot the shit.
None of that happened because you existed. The first time we met was the beginning of my experience of you. Before that, you may as well have been dead. It doesn't matter. There are a lot of people I will never experience in any way. And the fact that they exist or not, except for people's concept of like butterfly effect, but it will go in a more shallow version, will not affect me at all. And if they didn't exist, I would simply have a different life with different butterfly effects. The concept of meaning is entirely subjective. Even liking you, to say you are likable, only can exist as long as either you exist or somebody can remember you existed as likable. It's the old, what is the guy say in Game of Thrones? You die 2 times. The first time when you die, and then the second time, the last time anyone ever thinks of you. And that's a very profound idea. And also points exactly to what I'm describing. It made me that almost caused a crisis in me where I was like, shit, that death is actually a little bit sadder, even though when I die, I won't have an experience of that moment. I won't know that moment passed, but as a living person, I'm more afraid of that moment than I am of the moment of me actually dying. And that's absurd. It's logically incongruent.
That's one of the things that I've thought about actually, like for a long time, like just how our circles are small and like, you know, our lifespans are small and like we're going to vanish and be gone.
And eventually no one will even think of you. There are people who have died within the last 100 years who have already achieved that. You know what? I was watching something else the other day. It might've been an old Chappelle special. I know. Go ahead, attack me. But there's some of his old stuff. I'm trying to remember if it was that.
Yeah, he's good.
Or if it was something else. I feel like it was him. But it was somebody who was pointing out who was like, people mostly stop thinking about you within a year. Think about it. Think about anybody who's died. You have moments later in life. But if you really think about the person you lost the most, like the hardest, past a year, doesn't it make you uncomfortable to think a year after I die that the most I think about this person is the most I probably can expect anyone to think about me? It's not even It's not even the hundreds of years later that's incredibly sad. But again, once I die, to me, it's all off, and any angst I have about that goes away. Anyway, these are terrible tangents that I'm taking us down. Let's go ahead and give you one more. If you want to engage in one more point, and then I'm going to jump into some more calls here.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk. I'll let you run. The last thing I was just going to mention real quick was just for people listening, if they're interested in some of the because we talked about evolution, there's this interesting sort of debate going back and forth between a couple people on YouTube. I don't know. Have you ever seen Dave Farina's channel?
No. I mean, I don't know. Maybe. Okay. I don't know names.
All right. He goes by Professor Dave. It's just a nickname he made up. He's like a science educator.
Yes. I know people request Professor Dave a lot, and I probably have seen him.
Okay.
Yeah.
He did a series on the Discovery Institute, and they are the sort of intelligent design, like, lobby, so to speak. Stephen Meyer is like one of their staff people, and Dr. Tor, who's actually like a world-renowned chemist, but he works on like nanomachines.
Yeah.
He's a chemist. Sort of got involved in this debate with Professor Dave, and Dave kind of like really went like ad hominem, kind of like really went after him. And
let's skip the details because I can't defend whether or not that is true or anything. Let's just presume these two have debated, and then what?
So basically, I just wanted to alert people of it because Tor has been doing a series about abiogenesis and just looking at like the origin of life community. Like, you know, they do all this research and they need money, and so they put out a lot of claims.
Yes.
And they kind of like oversell like the case. He's not an intelligent designer, so he's not. He specifically says like, I think one day we will be able to explain like how
naturalistically how it started. Yeah,
through naturalistic processes, exactly. But just from a science perspective, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I'll let you go. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Talking to you as always, man.
Thanks, Mark. We'll pick it up another day, I'm certain.
All right, dude. Take care.
Later. Man, right as he went, I thought, wait, but no, okay. I'll do it next time. Let's talk about abiogenesis next time you call in, for sure. Anyway, I know that call went long. We'll keep going. We'll keep taking calls. I know I have a hard stop at 8:30 my time, which is about an hour and 7 minutes, but we'll probably stop before then anyway. But student Dr. Ben, I believe over on Twitch, based on if somebody wants to get that information, is at that time, will at that time be doing a fundraiser for something. I don't want to say I know what it's for until I'm sure, because I'm pretty sure I know. But anyway, if somebody wants to get that information, I'm just not going to overlap with what student Dr. Ben is doing, is basically what I'm telling you. But yeah. Anyway, I like when people call in about the moral arguments, because that specific argument is one that I feel like I haven't seen my perspective on it represented, despite the fact that I'm taking pieces of other things. But I like when people call in about these things, because that's the one that I just think is so stupid. Such a silly thing. And I'm not saying Mark is, because Mark largely agreed with my same conclusions, just that he feels like there's still something out beyond that. I'm just saying that the whole idea that like humans experience morality, what was the other option? Like, how wouldn't they? We're smart enough to describe things. How? How wouldn't they? Oh man. Anyway, Professor Dave is an expert at crushing flurfs. I like to hear that. I like a good flurf shutdown. Let's talk to, I don't know whether or not people gave up. Okay, no, good. This one's still correct. We're talking to David in Indiana. David in Indiana, you are on the line.
Hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm doing. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just got over strep, but I'm doing all right.
You're not Professor Dave, are you? What a coincidence that would have been.
No, I'm just regular run-of-the-mill David.
I'm just Dave. All right.
But
sure.
I want to apologize real quick for your screening, because I really didn't summarize what I was going to say best. But basically, I was calling in to talk about. Well, right now, Greg Locke has which I know you briefly covered him before.
Sure.
Is holding a Reawaken tour thing at his tent church. He held one today, he's doing one tomorrow. And how that has kind of validated, in my mind, my decision to have to cut off my father from having interaction with me or my family.
Yeah.
And the other point was how I can best I can best fight for, the rights of others around me and my family, which, that they are clearly trying to destroy.
So you want to, sorry. So is the question then like, how do you juggle family members who believe so poorly, or what was what's the summary of the question? Because my brain started to go somewhere and I think I zoned out about your question. For the record, I was thinking about my own family and the way I've cut certain people off. Yeah. But yeah, what's the, give me a summary on what you're wanting my response to.
Yeah, I kind of just want to know how I juggle it and how best I go from where I'm at now, and what I should do from here.
So here's the thing. I can't tell you specifically what you should do, but I can tell you things about what I did and what my considerations are. I am not a fan of cutting people off if it can be avoided, and trying to make sure that if you still have to, there may be ways open, but that's with exceptions. So there are members in my family who I cut off because they were the source of abuse of myself growing up. And some of those abuses were extreme, sort of heinous level of abuses. And so, like one of the family members I cut off, but actually mostly just because he was a huge dick to me as an adult. I ignored the fact that he did like other asshole things, like would put knives in my pillows in the hopes that I would stab myself in the head when I lay down, like that level of fucking little asshole when we were young. And I'm telling you, there were family members worse than him that I cut off for the worst things that they did. And it was sort of like one of those things of whether there is a way forward to where you become a better person or not, I don't care. It will never be with me. I get to say, you never get to, I can hope the best for everybody, go become a good person, go be a positive member of society or whatever else, but not with me, even if you become better. And I have tried to apply that outwardly. I have an ex who I had from back when I was Mormon, and a misogynist and a giant douchebag who I would love to come and say like, hey, I'm not that guy. And I want you to see who I am, and that like, I recognize the toxic elements of our relationship, including the ones that were my fault, which were most of them. Like I was the bigger problem. I would love to talk to that person and have that conversation and go, look who I am now. And I'm sorry. And can I pay you? Like, can I give you money to make up for some of the shit that you got to be a part of me getting from one phase to another? Right. And it's garbage. But she put the boundary down when we broke up that she didn't want to talk ever again. And at first I hated that and I wanted to challenge it, and maybe even thought about like, how do I manipulate this back into my favor? And now I'm sitting there going like, as much as I wish, and I actually am a good enough person that to be proud of myself, and would hope that she would be like, wow, yeah, you're not that. She's never changed the boundary. So I'm never going to push that. So I respect it in both directions. Even with my, I became a better person thing intact. So when it comes to, there are those people who I went, your abuse is so significant, I don't love you. You're my blood relative. It's like, I don't love you just because I have to. I don't love you at all. And so I don't care whether you become a good person. I'm not going to try and stop you. I'm not going to try and inhibit your life in any ways. You and I are strangers now. We don't affect each other's lives, and that's it. Then there's other levels of cutoff. Like, hey, you and I only argue when we talk because you find how I left offensive. Because something about my ability to live a life that you wish you could live, frankly, but you can't handle. And so we have to really hard boundary and restrict how much we talk. And then you have the position that like my parents are in, who I would call myself cut off from my parents, but there's a cordial boundary. And it's not just a cordial boundary. If my dad called me and said, first of all, if my dad called, I'd still answer the phone. And if he said, I read the CES letter and then all this stuff happened and I'm leaving the church, I would genuinely be excited to be a part of his life again. And same with my mother. I think that position that I have with my parents is probably the one that, if you don't have the other situations, we should try and strive for more often. And this is after years of testing and doing it wrong and stuff, where I go, I think I finally have the right one. And that a little bit as a society and people, we are a little too quick to go, this minor thing is different about you. You have this bigoted belief. We are not friends at all. But my mind was changed by the people. I had gay friends who knew I thought gay marriage should be illegal. And now I am queer. Well, openly queer. I was always queer. I just really successfully suppressed the gay side for a long time. But anyway, it's the people who changed my mind were the people who were ready, who actually didn't really turn their back on me at all, which is why outside of family, I will still be friends with bigots. And especially if I see that they grow and change and become more reasonable over time, and hopefully not bigots over time. But I was a tremendous bigot, and it was the people who loved me anyway that helped me change. And so I don't want some people in my life to not have access to me being that person. And so with my parents, the way I juggle it is you are at entirely arm's length. I don't know if I would use the words love to describe our relationship. There are things that it's kind of like I have those fucked up abuse victim feelings about that you're still grateful for, where you're like, I'm pretty happy with the person I am now and the ways in which I am strong. And I became strong because you abused me and I got past it. But then that sounds like I'm advocating for abuse, and I'm not. I think I'd be happier if I hadn't gone through that shit. But I would want to be a part of my parents' deconstruction if they came with genuine, honest desire. And I wouldn't rub it in their face. This happened with a sister who we had that sort of boundary. When we talk, we fight. And it's about this, and it's little snaps at each other and little jabs, and here and there we say the shit to each other. And then she eventually told me that she left, but it wasn't right when she left, because she basically, after leaving and was ready to start deconstructing, took some period of time to prepare herself for what she was expecting to be an I told you so. And instead she told me, and I started crying and told her I love her and told her, like, whatever you need, come to me, whatever you need. You're not getting an I told you so, you're getting I love you, and things are going to get better. And so I would hate to shut off anybody where I couldn't have that experience with. I don't know, David, does that sort of answer your question? Does that help at all? That's all I have to offer is how I've balanced my stuff.
Yeah, and I get that, and I tend to gravitate towards the second thing you mentioned there because, I had been separated from my dad for a few years, from childhood. That's a whole nother issue. And then, we kind of reconnected, and I was like, oh, great, we can try to, fix things, see if things could be smoothed out. But and instead, I really got nothing, and, it really didn't go anywhere. And then he started trying to throw all this, stuff from this tour, people, all these, prophets and stuff he'd been listening to and all that nonsense. And I'm just like, I don't know if I, can trust you or if I, want this around my family. And, I was trying to think of every single excuse I could in my head to be like, I have to keep my dad around. I have to, think of something
right
to make sure that, he's still in my life and my son's life. And it just came to a point where it just caused me nothing but just mental issues. And I'm like, I don't think I have another choice. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, so I think your instincts are right. You have to think about yourself and protect yourself. And if you're not in the position, because not everybody is me, and I don't mean that as that should be a standard anyone should try to achieve. I'm happy lately. I'm usually not happy. Happiness has been a recent thing that I didn't recognize very well. Like, what the fuck is this? Am I finding joy in life? But I was ready to fight my dad, argue with my dad. Actually, if he had wanted to fight too, I would have consented to a mutual consent fist fight. I just feel like he offered so many times and I never got the chance to try. And now I'd like to. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I was ready to argue and I had the points ready. Not everybody's good at it. Not everybody's articulate. And the fucked up thing is that it's not always them trying to save you. It's them trying to preserve their shitty beliefs. There are definitely times my dad picked arguments with me because he needed to feel like he won on a specific point that was clearly bothering him, not me. And those points, I guarantee you, he still thinks about. But you have to preserve your own health and well-being. And nobody gets inherent shots at you. Just because they decided you would be born, you didn't decide, you didn't agree, it doesn't make you owe them anything. So if they've earned it, this is what I've talked about this a lot. In our family, the number one rule was loyalty, mandated loyalty, not earned loyalty. That's the rule. You follow it because that's the rule. It's the number one rule. And if you break it, you are punished in accordance to breaking the number one rule. It's that same sort of thing of like, I didn't earn your consideration. I didn't earn your love, but I did, come in your mom and now you exist. So I get those things. Why? Why the fuck? You didn't earn it. And so if you want to give them an opportunity because they're a significant part of your life and your brain has an attachment to them because they exist in certain patterns and you still have positive memories and otherwise, that's totally up to you. But it sounds like you gave it a lot of tries and it might be a temporary cutoff. Maybe it goes, hey, you get to see now what your life is like without me. And if later we decide we want to reassess that, you now know that you not being a part of my life is on the table and that me threatening to leave, eventually I leave. It's not only a threat that is empty. And that probably puts you in a pretty good position if you decide to do that.
And that, I'm sorry, I don't need to cut you off.
No, you're good.
And that was my thought. And and it's not just me. It is the rest of my family who have separated themselves from this. I will say I am probably the first one who totally made the decision to be like, no, I just don't want you around at all. I don't want to speak to you or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
yeah.
And it's just like the fact that I was the first one to do it, it's just kind of shocking to me because this is something I never, ever thought I would do. Never even considered, never wanted to do.
You probably didn't even think it was an option.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Like I said, I was trying to come up with every other reason to come up with it, and it's just like, this just hurts too much.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I get it. Well, think about what I said. Think about what we talked about. But yeah, I think it's you gotta protect you. And sometimes, like I said, it's temporary, and you need time away so you can build up what you need. The thing that's fucked up with my dad that won't be an issue now because I've moved him. But my dad put all of my buttons on me, so he knew how to push them. He knew how to take. With everybody else, I can have a calm, collected argument with, and I don't lose my temper. I don't, some people will argue I do, but they haven't seen what me actually losing my temper looks like. I don't lose my temper. I don't take anything offensive. I don't care if I don't take it personally. I see actually someone, and we'll take them next. Someone also called Dave is waiting to tell me that they're sorry that they cursed me out. I genuinely don't care. It's fine. We'll still talk about it, Dave. You can sit there so I can say it to you directly, but I don't care. I don't without anybody else, but he knows where those buttons are. He knew how to push them. He had his log of things from, well, when you were a child, you did this and this. So what's so great about you? What's so great about you who did something as a fucking child asking me, a man in my 60s, you're not better than me. Cause in my 60s, I'm as bad as you were when you were 12. Yeah, that's some shit. Anyway, so that's, you got to take care of you because it's sometimes you need that space and time, and sometimes it's permanent, to reprogram yourself and get your buttons, the buttons they programmed you with, move those buttons to different places.
All right. And I do appreciate you for, giving me your thoughts and taking my call. And,
that's what I'm here for.
On an unrelated happy or positive note, I did want to tell you that I will win marbles one day. I want to win marbles one day.
We'll start doing some marbles game again.
If you ever see Snowball 2014, know that somewhere I'm giggling with glee.
Hell yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, for real though, we'll play marbles again one day, especially after I get a beefier production team, which is what the whole goal of the Patreon stuff is. But yeah, thank you, David.
Alrighty, thank you so much.
Later.
Bye.
For people who are wondering, Marbles is an online game that I sometimes play on Twitch, though I haven't in a while because I've been focusing on the line. But it's what it sounds like. It's marble races, basically. It's a bunch of marbles racing down. Hey, before we go any further, I do want to say thank you to Alex, who is our call screener tonight. Also, thank you to all the mods who've shown up. I know I got cookies. I saw Mika earlier. I don't know if Mika had to leave at one point. And then obviously members and friends and people and everybody who's watching, participating. Don't forget, you can become a Patreon, patreon.com/calltheline. If we hit 250 patrons before the end of the month, taking the head down to bald, taking the sides off my beard, and I'm cosplaying as Matt Dillahunty for a week of shows. It's going to be awesome. All right. Since I already set it up, I'll bring it in here. We're going to talk to Dave in Maryland, who wanted to talk about cursing me out. Dave, I really don't take it. I really don't take it personally, but I'll let you get it off your chest if you like.
Jimmy, what's up, bro?
What up? Can you also take me off speakerphone? I'd really appreciate that.
Are you on?
I just hear myself. Now I don't, though. Well, yes, I do. Now I don't. I think we're good.
Is that better?
I'll talk quietly to try and reduce the odds.
So I called the other week when Nikki was on, and I said, fuck you, Jimmy, and hung up.
Oh, I thought that was a joke.
Yeah, it was a joke.
Oh, okay. No. I really didn't take it seriously then.
I know. My name is Dave. I thought I would call in. I have nothing really to talk about, so I just thought I'd kind of...
Okay.
Fake apologize.
Well, no worries. Fake apologize. Yeah, that works. Well, why don't you end it the way it began and just do it again? I don't know. Unless you got something.
Sure. I'm not quite done yet. Hang on.
Go ahead.
So I do have a question about your opinion on smart drugs and also pills that can make you more moral.
Smart drugs and pills that can make you more moral.
Yeah, so smart drugs are basically chemicals that can help you think. So it could be like Ritalin or Adderall can help you concentrate, but there's a lot more. There's like an entire class.
Yeah,
it's called nootropics. Some can help you memorize stuff. I can list a whole bunch of them. I asked Matt if he would be interested in taking them. He said not really. He hasn't really thought about it, but that was a while ago.
Yeah. It's a whole complicated category because there's a lot of concept of what your brain is who you are. And so you have all of these traits that make you the individual you are. And then there are certain traits which you can say are like, these aren't traits that make you wrong or a bad person. So to try and get rid of those traits, a lot of people will even compare that to genocide, or they'll call it eugenics. And even a lot of those arguments become very complicated. For example, there's a lot of talk about what if we could cure autism, and there's a lot of people that are like, there's nothing wrong with me, there's nothing to cure. And I appreciate that. And of course I would say no one should ever make those people take an autism cure. But I have autism. Does it matter if I would want to take the cure? Does my autonomy matter? Do I get to decide whether or not these specific things that I see as barriers in my life that I actually don't like, do I get to make the choice and weigh whether or not I would take an autism cure? And so without answering whether I would take the cure or not, though I think I said in the past, I think I would, but it's complicated because of the way people are so attached to a lot of these things as a core part of their identity. And so the question becomes not necessarily whether or not something should exist. It becomes, what is a type of medication somebody should be compelled to take versus a medication that somebody should have the option to take. So, and by the way, we do treat in society most things as options. You don't have to take chemo, which is poison, when you get cancer. You're going to die if you don't in a lot of the cases, if you do turn it down, but you have that choice and you have your autonomy. And that's definitely a scenario where you get poisoned. And by the way, chemo changes a lot of people to their very brain in there, and you'll see major personality changes often after chemo too, which is sort of the irony of this specific example. So it's tough. It's tough to say. Would I take a smart drug? I will tell you that most of the times that I have taken things that alter my mental state, if they make me lose a sense of my mental state, I don't like them. But if they make it better, I do like them, which is why I was addicted to cocaine. And now I argue with myself about whether I was addicted to cocaine, because it turns out that if you are autistic, in many cases, and this is not an endorsement of cocaine, do not go take, I'm not telling anyone to take cocaine. Don't take cocaine. It's bad for you. But turns out the thing that I was connected to, yes, it helped me stay awake and manage more things. But it turns out that when you have autism and certain things that are happening in your brain are happening, and this is true of ADHD and a lot of people who try crazy drugs like meth, and then they have a totally different experience on meth because they have ADHD. It turns out the reason why my experience was so unique and I've been so uncomfortable comparing myself to other addicts is my brain was taking coke as medicine. And it was actually leveling out something that was chaotic. It wasn't actually, I wasn't getting the standard neurotypical, I guess, response to coke. So when I now look back on that. Somebody said Jimmy has gone through everything. I hope that's one day true. I've gone through a lot, but there's plenty more. It's just I tell you about all the many things. And yes, I have a wild life with a lot of weird stories because I'm a wild person with weird tendencies. I like to let bugs sting me, for example. I'll talk about that. We'll unpack that another day. Anyway, sorry, I just got distracted by that chat. There's a lot of things out there. And so I'm more broadly answering. I would take a drug that made me feel still myself and I stayed grounded in my sense of self. If it then enhanced my ability to not even like go to super genius, like smart, what's the name of that show? It was Limitless. Smartless is a podcast. I was going to say Smartless. Limitless.
Oh, I saw that movie.
Yeah, and obviously the basis of the movie is stupid and flawed, but a drug like that appeals to me less than a drug that literally just goes like, hey, just because you ate food that doesn't support your physical health, and I don't mean this in I get depressed because I ate cookies, like I'm sad about having eaten cookies. I'm saying sugar is poison and I'm addicted to it, and when I have too much, I chemically react with depression. That is true of me. I would love something that stops those sorts of things. I'd love a smart drug that goes, you don't get depressed anymore. You don't get anxious anymore. You don't get whatever, which is why, like for anxiety, I take beta blockers. It doesn't affect your mind. It stops the physical responses. Anyway, all that to say, I think that those drugs sound cool and should be available if an individual chooses so, with full ideas of like, here's what the side effects could be, and let a person evaluate for themselves whether they would want to take them. It's really a burden being as intelligent as I am already. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. Okay. Anyway, I don't think I would take a drug to make myself smarter and raise my IQ ways or anything like that.
And what about the moral drugs?
I don't know how that would work, the moral drugs. Because the moral drugs, I think that you're saying like it would increase empathy, which also I feel like there can be an overcorrection for. I feel like if we're talking about, if my standard for morality is well-being, there are people who should be more empathetic, who lack it. But as long as they can exist within society because they understand the theory, because we can also logically sort of defend it, I don't know that I need them to more naturally intuit as long as they exist within society. But if a person is a legitimate psychopath and wants the ability to not be, I again, it's sort of the same answer I gave about myself with autism. I don't know that I can say that they shouldn't have the option to decide not to be, but I'm very reluctant to tell anyone they must, even though if you don't make a psychopath more empathetic, they might become a serial killer. Not that most psychopaths do. In fact, I think it's still the minority of psychopaths that become serial killers. I hope that that's true. But it's difficult to me to say don't have the drugs available to those who might enjoy it. And the standard of to make somebody more moral would be tough to defend a mandate on, for example.
Yeah, I don't know how they work either. I did watch a TED Talk, probably at least it's probably 10 years old by now.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, but I think it probably hits different parts of your brain, probably can increase compassion, moral decision making, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I would try it. I don't have any like moral deficits or anything. Just to see, what it'd be like.
Yeah, there's something about my brain chemistry that changed in the last 17 or so years. I think of my 15-year-old self that changed, where I go, chemically, my brain exists in a better state now. I care more about people. I'm more likely to cry if something sad happens. There used to be a little bit of like a mild sociopathic character, at least, that I was walking around in, probably to socially protect myself from the types of people who would harm me when I was younger, where just things didn't faze me. I could be around dead bodies, which would happen a lot in school, in certain labs and stuff, and just totally unfazed. And now I'll think back to cadaver labs I attended and just be like, get sick at the idea of the things that didn't faze me back then. I like have memories of different things in the past that, yeah, it didn't faze me before. And so clearly my brain chemistry has changed in how I interact with those things. And so one could say you can change a brain chemistry. Am I more moral than before? Yes, but not for those specific reasons. But I don't know. It's terribly complicated, Dave. Anyway, cuss me out.
Okay. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Thank you, Dave. That was good. That was good. I felt that that's where we were getting. Let's see. We'll take a couple more calls and then run through them super chats. There's one that just came up that's very funny. I'll respond now, but we'll read it again when you ask, when it comes up. My brothers and I have spoken before on multiple occasions about how strange it is that there are some staunch similarities between Donald Trump and our father. Kind of down to the way they speak too, but they're also both from New York, so that's part of it. But like, there are things that are distinctly different. And at one time, my dad didn't like Donald Trump for those things, but he sort of fell into where you start to reason yourself a little more and more. And well, at least he's. I feel like I don't know if I'm doing an impression of Trump or my dad now. At least he's, sticking it to Nancy Pelosi, that sort of shit. Let's talk to friend of the channel, oftentimes supporter, Harry Chairstepper in Kentucky.
Oh, I'm on.
Hello. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing fine.
Let's bring the headset a little bit away from your mouth because we're just clipping it a little bit there. We're coming in a little loud.
Okay. Is that any better?
It sounds much better to me. What do you want to ask about?
Right. Well, I heard some other hosts, probably on a different similar show, telling the caller that there's never been anybody who's like seen heaven. So I want to ask you how you felt about the people who actually have claimed it, because there's books and the like of people who have, quote, seen heaven,
right,
near death, whatever.
So first of all, from the onset, the phrase is dishonest, because they haven't seen, even by their own account, they haven't seen heaven. They've visualized heaven because they didn't perceive it with their eyes. So right now, if I tell you to think of a blue spaceship that's in the shape of an anus, and you're doing the exercise, I hope you are, did you see it or did you think it? Did you visualize it? You haven't seen it, but I know we exist in these colloquialisms, but no one has seen heaven. Even by their own claims, nobody has laid eyes on heaven. Now, they believe they visualized heaven with some sort of spiritual eyes, and that experience happened at some point while they were dead. So here's the thing that I think is really stupid about that. From the moment you become unconscious to the moment you become conscious again, somewhere in the middle there is death. And there's a period of time where your brain is still active, even after your heart has stopped. So you wouldn't even necessarily say you're completely dead. In fact, nobody has ever been completely dead, all the way dead. There's dead, and then there's completely dead, or whatever the guy says on In Princess Bride. Nobody's been there. because once you go there isn't any coming back as far as anything that I'm aware of. There's a certain point of death that you can't come back from. I think it's like 6 minutes or so of your brain being deprived of oxygen. There's no comeback after that. With some exceptions, obviously, you can cool a person down and practically cryogenically preserve, not cryogenically, because that suggests really, really cold, but you can extend that time out with temperature a little bit. But there's still that point, right? It's still once you've lost some amount of brain function, you're gone, and you're gone. So we're talking about people who went unconscious and whose heart stopped. Their heart wasn't beating, so we consider them dead. Their brain kept going, and then they became conscious again. And their reckoning is that they know during that period of time when they were unconscious, when they had an experience outside of their body. How could anyone claim such an outrageous thing? How could you know when you have chemicals that are draining to the back of your brain, literally the chemicals you dream through? They're moving around your brain. There's chaos going here. There's electricity firing in desperation of trying to figure out how to get your heart pumping again. There's all kinds of shit going on in your brain. And you have this dream, and dreams can be very, very significant. I once thought I was in love with somebody because of how romantic a dream I had about them was. I was younger, and now when I have those dreams, I go, I must think they're hot or something, or something weird just happened. My brain gave me this dream because they knew I would not want that. The other night I had a dream I went on a date with somebody whom I have tremendous chemistry with, and I'm sure we would have an amazing date were we to be local to each other and go out. But in the dream, she hated me. Hey, literally the first thing I messaged her, I was like, I had a dream we went on a date last night and you hated it. Anyway, I can't even tell you if I go to sleep tonight and I wake up 8 hours later, which means something incredible's happened, because that never happens to me. But I can't tell you when in time any of those dreams happened. Let's say I had a dream about going down a raft. I can't tell you once I've fallen asleep to once I waked up whether the raft happened in the first hour of sleep I had, and then I don't remember any dreams after, or the last hour of sleep I had. I can probably narrow it down with things we know about the brain cycle and tell you it's most likely to have happened here, but I can't even tell you that. So how the fuck can anybody come to you and say, this experience I had happened while I was dead, so it couldn't have happened? Nope. If your brain was gone, you're gone. Like,
maybe I should play devil's advocate or
go ahead.
Jesus' advocate.
I'd love it.
Maybe that's just what God wanted them to see. He brought them there temporarily so they could take the message back to
but how would you know?
True believers.
How would you know that it was a dream or an actual experience of God? Especially when it reflects the imagery you understand, and no one ever comes back with a proof of the Goldbach conjecture. They all come back with love one another is the message. Nobody comes back with a combination to a safe they never knew. They came back with, this great grandfather who, resembles my dad. But anyway, once I described him, people were like, that's your great granddad. You never even met him. I met him and he told me, love one another. Not, I buried a bunch of money right here and no one's found it yet. It's always that shit. And even this one kid that was like the most famous example of went to heaven because he came back and he had all of these memories that he just couldn't understand. And they write a book about him and he's on Oprah and all these things. And in heaven, this happens. And everybody has ice cream nipples or whatever he said. He eventually admits years later, like, nah, I was definitely running with it. It was definitely a thing where I came out and I said stuff and then, the attention was exciting and I just kept going and everybody listened. Yeah, he pulled a bit of a Bart. What? I don't think these people have a good enough reason to believe it themselves, let alone anybody else. So how would we demonstrate that any of it is true when this is the reality we live in?
I don't know. That's kind of where I was. Like, it's just basically a flailing brain. That's all you got.
Anybody who ever tells you, though, that they know when, because that's always a part of the story. I died, and then before they revived me, they'll establish some timeline. Just call them a liar. How could you know when the experience was? If you can't tell me in a night, the moment you had a dream. I've had dreams that felt 30 minutes long in the 9 minutes between my snooze alarm. I'm not kidding. I've had dreams where I was like, holy shit, I had a whole fucking dream. I had a whole ass experience, and I fell asleep and I woke up 9 minutes later because I hit the snooze alarm. It doesn't even seem possible. The dream I just had just fit in that 9 minutes. So how the fuck are you going to tell me any timeline when you're unconscious and your brain is shooting electricity? How? That's my only question is how. Sorry, we do have to wrap this up soon, but go ahead and what's your follow up there? I just saw the time is all.
Okay, yeah, it reminds me of a line from John Dies at the end. I don't know if you read that, but dude was talking about dreams like if you got woke up by the thunder, how did your brain know it was about the thunder? Which obviously it's just a silly bug, but it just reminded me of that line.
But that's like crazy deep, bro. No, I get it. No, I like it. I like it. Yeah. Anyway, Harry, I hope I gave you some good ponderances if this was something that was challenging you at all.
I appreciate it. No, I just pondering it.
Sure.
It's just goofy.
Cool. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. I would love for somebody with a near-death experience to call and try and challenge me sometime when I'm on the channel. That would be great. And sorry, I'm just letting there's a screener who keeps reconnecting when I drop them. Just, hey, no more calls. You can drop. And then I'm going to put a smiley face. All right. I keep going drop, and they just reconnect. I think they think the system is kicking them out, and it's me. All right. We are talking to Bets. I like that. Bets, pronounced she, her, a new atheist from Louisiana. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm all right. Did you know I used to live in Slidell, Louisiana?
Oh, really? I'm new to Louisiana. Actually, I say I just moved here, but we moved here a year and a half ago. And so we really don't know anybody here. And we're a Shreveport area. So I don't know where Slidell is from there, but I've heard of it before.
It's basically across the lake, Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans, just north of it. But I got to tell you, if you're new to it, a mild assurance here. It's a dog shit state. The whole thing sucks. You leave as soon as you can. Well, it's an awful place.
Yeah, you know what? We were planning on we had picked out a different place in Texas, and my grandma lived in Louisiana. My grandpa was Air Force, and there's a big Air Force base here, and we kind of just got roped into just buying the house instead of helping her move. So it wasn't really purposeful
nice of you.
Coming here.
No, I get it.
But it did get us. It did get us out of Illinois and away from my evangelical family, which is the reason for our call.
Sure. Good. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, lay it down for me.
Oh, all right. So it's been a long story. Obviously, I was raised the first 8 years of my life Catholic, so we went through, all the regular Catholicism stuff when you're a kid, and then we switched to an evangelical church, and this church was located in a barn, like an actual barn with hay. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very charismatic, and I ever since I was little, I was like, I didn't buy the shit. You know what I mean? And I would always be like, wow, what is going on here? And I was kind of the only kid. I'm the one of five. I'm the middle child. And I never really bought into I was just like, wow, this is very important to you.
Yeah.
Whoa, this means a lot to you. I was more of that child. What, but really I wanted to see and pick your brain. And I've never really talked to anybody about this before, so this is new to me. But we got out of there about a year and a half ago just because I think the evangelical system with how they think in general is very harmful to kids. And I have 3 little ones. And I raised one in there, and it felt like emotional ping pong balls all over for 18 years. So I have 3 little ones now, and I got remarried, and we moved away, and we have no contact. But the church, I'll give you some details. It was definitely the talking in tongues and the screaming and the yelling.
Sure.
But they would like grab us and do like I bind you Satan in the name of the Lord, and they would cast demons out of us.
And you'd pretend to
all
faint?
kinds, like, yes, and I would pretend to faint every time. But they would get a little extra with it because I would put up a little resistance, you know? And so
which, by the way,
faint,
it's not all, I will say it's not always pretending. And I used to think it was always pretending. Now I just am sure it's not the Lord doing it. But now that TikTok and Vines and stuff exist, and I've seen people faint because they got jump scared, it probably is genuinely overwhelming some people.
It is overwhelming. Even like, think about it. Like, I used to own some music venues, and people would get so excited about meeting people who are there, you know, and they'd literally like shake and faint. You know what I mean? It's over
literally happened to me once.
It's whatever you want it to be, and that feeling that they're getting is their high. I feel like.
I met a fan at a convention years ago. It was a different convention. It was the I think the only time I've had this stronger reaction. But she started like overheat and looked like, and so I was like, let's just lay on the floor. And so in the middle of this big convention center with people all around, we both laid on the floor, and she was able to recover. It was a very strange experience for me. I don't like anybody to acknowledge that they like me in person, especially not my loved ones. And so it was bizarre. We actually became friends later, but it was bizarre.
Nice.
Anyway.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I am the Spirit of God is what I'm saying.
Yeah, nice. We all are, right? In our own way here.
Lol.
But, it's interesting. Like, okay, so we would have to wash people's feet with like these pitchers of water, and it was a barn, so we would have to go out to like this well and get water, and we would have to wash our parents' feet. And then I don't know, have you ever heard of that? And anybody I've talked to was like, no, we never had to do that. Have you heard of this?
See, I've heard of people who had like. I dated somebody, for example, and she was in a charismatic, but it's like a very small, out of the preacher's house church. And like when you would leave when you would leave for a while, like you try to come back, you'd have to like tearfully beg the 20 people in this living room for forgiveness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I feel like the feet washing thing, I mean, her parents weren't a part of the church, so she didn't do it, but I feel like I remember her saying some kind of ritual like that crazy shit was happening. No, I'm not aware of which religion that is specifically, because I think it's not tied to a larger denomination. I think it's usually like fucking, but then like there's still things that I was talking to another creator. She hasn't created in a while, so I'm not going to plug her because I don't know if she'd want to be plugged. But we were texting earlier, and she was talking about, we were talking about, basically I've given up on dating through dating apps. I can't do it. I hate it, and I don't want to do it. And I was describing, I was like, look, the thing I like are like when you organically meet people and you make friends at group activities, but then I hate going to group things. But really, my favorite place I've ever like started what would become a relationship was like going somewhere where there was a group and you make some friends, but then maybe you make this friend that you just have incredible chemistry with. And you're like, and she was like, oh, it sounds like church. And I was like, no, because I'm talking about like group activities that change. I'm not saying I want to see the same people at each group activity. And she's like, no, that's actually like, she's like, yeah. So like the kind of churches I went to, the type of Christian church, like you still went to Baptist, but you hopped around until you found the church that was the most exciting. And you're like, and I was like, nah, that is not the church experience I'm familiar with, or even knew that. I guess I probably knew that people individually would decide to go to other churches, but I didn't know that there would ever be like a Baptist church that was like, by the way, if you don't enjoy it here, why don't you try the Baptist church across town or anything like that? That was not anything I was familiar with.
That's another big difference. My husband's
Bets, if you'll pull your mic away too a little bit. Pull your mic away too a little bit. You're clipping when you talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you good?
I think so.
Better?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so my husband's father is a Baptist pastor.
Sure.
And so we have that side of things. But this was like a whole nother thing. Like we weren't allowed to go to another church. Like the whole time. Yeah, all the way up till we moved out of the house. Like it was like forbidden.
It may have been a local denomination, probably based on Bapticism. I mean, you can look into what smaller independent fundamentalist Baptist churches look like and groups.
Yeah, and
I don't think it's
fundamental.
NIFB.
Like that got me on the whole YouTube thing, right? So like the ex-fundy thing really got me into like the, I guess, how long have you been on YouTube? Just curious.
It'll be 5 years next month.
Okay. And was this part of like your deconstruction journey? Did it play into that?
No, I was completely out by the time. I've developed as an ex-evangelical, ex-Mormon, but I was totally deconstructed by the time I guess I shouldn't say totally. You know, you don't lose everything, but I was just going to
ask you, when did you feel like you've had that completion process? Because like, I feel like I've been coming through it my whole life, you know, but I really never really got away from it, like physically for a year and a half. And it feels really good. I mean, it's sad at times and you get, you know, it's just sad. Like you leave your whole family behind, and my dad's like a Trump maniac too. Yeah. So like that doesn't help the situation at all.
I would say my personal development as a person didn't stop, but by about 25, which is 7 years ago now, I would say that I felt so disconnected from the person I was as a Mormon, where I would have left, you know, I left in my heart, if you will, somewhere between 18 and 20, and then publicly by 21, 22. So to me, it's like I already was beginning my deconstructing for sure at 18, even though I was still in. By 25, I would say that it's a different human. It's like, I have the memories of what that person went through, but so much so I ended up changing my name to Jimmy. And I went by Jimmy. The last name I didn't change until YouTube, but I actually started going by Jimmy socially, as this contrasting person from the old person, before YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Have you always gone by Bets?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Okay.
I
like Bets.
It's just been I did country radio for a little while, and so that was like my country thing. But my real name is Betsy. Actually, Betsy.
Yeah. But Bets has a Z in it, which makes it cool.
Yeah.
You know, my fake middle name is Alexander, and I like it because it has an X in it. That's pretty much my attachment to Alexander, and I like the name Xander for short. Yeah. James Alexander Snow, or Jimmy Snow, aka. All right. Well, cool, Bets. I'm gonna jump over to the super chat thing. But if you got a question or comment you want to make before you go, the floor is yours.
No, man, just keep doing what you're doing, and you're doing a great job. I enjoy listening to you.
I don't know what hand gesture I was trying to make. You'll see it in I was trying to do something where I was going to be like, rock a piece or something, and then I turned it around and did
dude,
three.
I'm definitely a rock on, like horns, metal kind of thing. Yeah.
There you go. That'll work. All right.
There you go. Right back at you, man. Have a great night.
See you, Bets.
And bye.
I'm excited for the new call-in system because I'm noticing this thing with some calls clipping is happening more often recently. So I'll be very excited to get that new system up and running. I forgot to mute the thing again, so y'all got to hear the ring. Boom, boom. But yeah, I'm excited ultimately for that. Hey, you know something I don't do in the past, but I totally could be doing? What if we had music while doing the super chats? Why don't I do that? That makes total sense. I've got a playlist on Spotify. I have all this music that I have licensed to be able to use on shows and shit. And so not quite copyright free. A lot of people maybe turn it down. I don't know if that's a good level. But I'm just saying we could I feel like in this way though it's gonna compete, right? But I could change it. Oh, I'm afraid. You all tell me, is this, first of all, let me turn auto off. Let me stop doing the gain control so it actually quiets down. And so now, is this a pleasant back? Someone says show your feet. If we get 500 patrons, I'll show my feet. We need 500 patrons for that. 250, I'll shave my head. But you want feet pics, it's 500. Still too high. All right, let's take it down to there. How's that? Yeah. I'm waiting for the, is it still too loud? Maybe no lyrics. Yeah, there's whatever, but this is pleasant. We're good. Someone said yes, pleasant. Song is pleasant. Too loud, but keep it on. Can you hear me over it? I don't know whether it's still the old comments coming in or the new, because everybody's on different time. Are we? Okay. I've got a couple of good now. Some people saying louder. Hilarious. Okay. I just don't want them to compete where it mutes one or the other. Like when it's playing louder, it shuts me up or something. And if it was doing that, I would have to change the way the sound's coming in to where I'm giving just one audio input to the whole board, which I can't usually do during the calls portion, but I can do now. So that's the whole reason I was asking. But it sounds like we're good. So let's switch over to the super chat portion. Let me make sure. Actually, I gotta fix the super chat portion. I gotta put this on that, and then this on what is this one called? Social 15 250 mil. There we go. Refresh title and send the first one. So any super chat of $5 or more, it helps us pay for the call-in system, helps us pay for production, helps us pay for keeping shows going, and all of that. Unfortunately, as much as I love doing this, especially when I wanna, cause I wanna, I love doing HOSTility, we do still have bills to pay, and to some degree, we have to, we'll do it live, fuck it. We do have to pay the bills. Jimmy, your voice is music enough for me. Lamau. No. I am gonna, I scooched it up a little. I felt like I wanted a little more. All right. No, my mic volume is maxed out. I can't raise my mic. I'd have to lower the audio to make that contrast happen. I guess there's technically, I can pull up. There we go. I'll pull up my mic in this thing. All right. Cool. We're just gonna hope everything's good. All right. Moving to, is this the right window? Yeah, it is. It works. I need to physically adjust where I am, or actually, I don't want to physically adjust where I am. I liked where I was, so I'll use this fancy camera that I paid way too much for, and it moves. The camera is moving right now. That's pretty good. I like that. I can squeeze myself into frame. John S. said, I thanks Jimmy. Coming to Apple this year, the I thanks. Thank you very much, John S. You're welcome. But thank you for being here and supporting the channel and show. Again, whatever the question, statement, whatever, $5 or more. Obviously, you can't just like put a bunch of slurs up. We're not going to put that on the board, but within reason, whatever question, comment, anybody wants to put something up, we'll do it. $5 or more in the super chats. Jimmy, can you play Cannibal Corpse while you read the super chats? So I can't play any music. I have to play music specifically from a service that I use. This is license music for which I have a license, and my channel is set through their system to automatically be fine when we do the show. Because if I didn't have that set up, I would get what's called a copyright claim. But because I have it set up and synchronized, it doesn't copyright claim when I play music. So yeah. Anyway, Too Young to Feel This Old says, love you, Jimmy. Congrats on a new show. Too Young to Feel This Old is the person with the username that one night when we were trying to make the show not go on for 7 hours, which it did, we had Aron and Forrest on, and we, for 10 minutes, talked about not the comment, but the actual super chat, the username, Too Young to Feel This Old itself, for a full 10 minutes. A full 10. Anyway. What is this currency? Hang on, I'm gonna ask Google. What is it? I feel like that's some sort of Czechoslovakian. Yes, 1 Czech koruna, because it's not called Czechoslovakia anymore. It's called the Czech Republic. 1 Czech koruna says, first super chat to the line, Cus I Wanna. Thank you for sticking with the meme. By the way, we only have a few more of these, so get them in now if you want the show. We aren't going to go more than 10 more minutes because of go check out Student Dr. Ben on Twitch when we finish here. I feel like I want to end the show with the intro also, because how is it just an intro? It doesn't say like in a moment or stay tuned. It just goes. And that intro is so fucking good. I'm sure people are tired of me being so impressed by my own work, but I really feel like I outdid myself with this intro. Granted, it's several pieces of other people's stuff. There's a service by which I got an After Effects template, which I then modified and customized to my stuff. And then I found the song that I liked from the same service. And then I spent most of the time synchronizing where the audio and the beats would land compared to the audio cues. That's why, like, at the beginning, you have that build up and then it goes, and you see the line presents, "Cuz I Wanna." Anyway, I'm happy about it. Someone said that's only $2.26, so it didn't meet the bar. Look, so the way the bar works is we get a color, and the equivalent to $5. So if you notice that the most recent one in there, Kim, is that color green. The $2 one is usually a color blue that we don't put up. So if it doesn't meet the threshold, that's because YouTube is trying to trick us. Because on my end, it does meet the threshold. It says, so I don't actually hard translate everything into the numbers that are correct. I just go, is the green $5 color the one that it's using? So maybe that's the way, the check Coronas, if you want to trick your way into being able to save money, all you have to do is have a check account ready to go. Someone says, nice haircut. At least this one's more recent. Thank you. Thank you, Fat Man. Fat Man Plays It All said, nice haircut, Jimmy, in all caps, which is a joke with it. Thing we joke about. Brinpoo KC says, here's a little ego boo. That I think this came in when I was talking about how ego has to be present to be a YouTuber in the first place. And I'm sure I will be punished for acknowledging it out loud. Because that's the thing that happens. Like, if you just straight up say to people, like, hey, please go buy our merch, because then we'll make more money and the business will do better. They're like, wow, you just straight up said what everyone's doing and you said it outright. I want you to make a shitty buy that merch song, buy that merch, and try and manipulate and trick me into doing it. I don't want you to be honest about it. And so I'm sure somebody will be like, Jimmy goes on a rant about what an egomaniac he is, which isn't wrong. It just seems mean. and unequally distributed. $10 for Sheridan Bernasconi. I didn't wanna, but the universe made me turn 71 today. Well, happy birthday, Sheridan Bernasconi. You have gotten to level 71, and I feel like you have a frame of reference for just how much the world has turned to shit. That would be probably pretty depressing. Because I'm like, in my only 32 years, I'm like, wow, this place sucks. And it's getting worse. And I can only imagine what doubling that roughly would do. So both my congratulations and condolences for everything you've had to see. But happy birthday, nonetheless. Polly Pocket says, Jimmy, you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience to share. I love you. Hug. Yeah, I'm good at telling a story. And I can put words in an order that appeal to some people. I don't know if I don't want anyone to think I feel competent, but entertaining. I feel I'm entertaining. Don't mistake my entertaining nature for competence is what I'm telling you. He's tricking you. That Jimmy Snow, he's tricking you. Thank you. I'm very touched. By the way, I would happily answer questions much more happily than having to read my own compliments. Ryan Werner sends $5 with the message mods, and we'll take that as a cue to remind everybody once again that the mods are awesome. Unless Ryan is asking me to take the $5 and then after YouTube takes its 30%, distribute roughly, what would it be, like 18 cents between all of the mods each, in which case I'll work on it. But I think PayPal will actually take a minimum 25-cent fee for each 18 cents I send, and I will be negative 7 cents each time. So whichever one you want, Ryan. But yes, thank you, Ryan. And thank you again to the mods and the call screeners and everybody who came to watch this little Cuz I Wanna experiment. And we'll do it again in the future. This one I made reference to during the show, but we'll read it out loud now. Is Donald Trump Jimmy's dad? From Ivan De La Luz. And there are things about the way they talk, especially, that are pretty bizarrely similar. And then sort of this like this mob-like way of ruling a family is also not unfamiliar. Kim Wilson says, excited for Lloyd. That is mentioning how Lloyd Evans is coming on the 21st of February. Fun fact, if you ask a JW about shunning, they'll lie and say it doesn't happen. They are allowed to lie to prospective converts. I did not know that. I assume that they would have tried to like just dress it up the way Mormons do, where they're like, well, no, it's not that it's magic underwear. And they like try to make it sound more palatable. And they do super good. They're so well at it. They make it sound super less culty. RB says, hey, Jimmy, wondering why you ever have a co-host or are that... Wait. Hey, Jimmy, wondering why you ever have a co-host or are that your intellect demands your own show more often. I think it's just the way in which I have so much to say. I almost feel bad for co-hosts sometimes where I'm like... And then, like, the Sunday show's a weird place for me because Matt and I both have so much to say. But with everything and the current dynamic as it is, I don't feel like... I definitely say less on the Sunday show than any other show that I'm on. And it just, I think, might look weird to the exterior because I do have so much. But yeah, once I go, man, I don't even realize how much time passes sometimes. Where it'll be like, oh, Mark and I just had a conversation about the Clom for 30 minutes? What the fuck? Like, that shit happens all the time. Too often, almost. Yeah, it just passes. It just passes along. Let's see. Logical Larynx says, would you ever consider adding a show called The Punchline with atheist comedians as hosts, also mod pizza party? So, of course I would consider any show. However, keeping in mind that the main promise of the channel is that all shows at the minimum will have a call-in element. Now, I'm not going to say what it is, but there is a future show developing that I'm excited about, that I think will that will scratch people's... We have a lot of funny people work on this show, and I think it will scratch a lot of funny people's itch. And so, yeah, I don't know. I had just banned somebody, but I'm going to unban them and just leave them in timeout for the moment. But I feel like you know who you are and you know you broke a rule, but I'm not going to address directly what the rule was because that would actually draw attention to a specific thing that happened that shouldn't be. But I'll just say, James Daniel, you probably know what you did. Don't fucking do it again or you're banned from the show. Completely. Anyway... Mimi the Clown says, hey, Jimmy, you helped me come to terms with the fact that I'm an atheist. I'm also pansexual and demisexual. I wish I had a question, but I love you. Well, listen, that's great. I'm pansexual. I feel like my demisexuality... Sorry, I should have done a slower fade. I feel like there is an element of demisexuality to me lately, too. But it's sometimes yes, sometimes no. There are people where I'm like, nah, I could straight up just fuck somebody I hated, probably, and not care. But then there are other things where I'm like, nah. I feel like I'm in a phase in my life right now. Like I was mentioning, giving up on online dating and dating apps. I feel like I'm in a phase of my life right now where I'm like, I'm pretty content with everything. So doing this dating app thing feels a little bit like I'm trying to force it into my life. Like, yeah, I wish I had somebody, and I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to let something show up. I'm going to fall in love with the right person at the right time without looking for the right person at the right time. And maybe that's not going to happen now. Maybe it'll be later. Also, I've got a poly side to me, but I don't know what I would decide if it was something significant and local, like somebody nearby, because I'm not really interested in long distance anything ever again. But with the poly stuff, it works out a little bit more. I don't know. I haven't decided what everything would look like, but we do have to go here in a second because go check out Student Dr. Ben. I think he's on Twitch. Might be on YouTube. Our Margin did say, Jimmy, just to help balance out all the love, I do hate you. Hope you're well. That's very sweet of you to say. That's definitely my preference. On the one hand, if people want to send money to compliment me, I don't want to say don't send money. We got to pay for the shows. But on the other hand, I'd way rather be told someone hates me than that they love me. It's a weird thing. And I'm glad that cut off me talking about my love life, because I just should never. It's just a weird thing to talk about publicly anyway. Anyway, thanks for watching. Go check out Student Dr. Ben, who's doing a fundraiser, I believe, over on his Twitch. If you go over there and he's not, maybe check his YouTube. And this was an awesome first episode of Cus I Wanna. I'm happy to have been here with you all. I think it went well. I would call this a success, and there will be more. And do you want to know when there will be more? I'll tell you when. When I wanna.